Good morning and welcome to our January 30th, 2023, 9 a.m. strategic planning meeting. It is 9:01. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present and our executive management team. And we are starting off with Mike Burgess. Good morning, Mike.
Morning, commissioners. Nice to see you all last week. Going to run through an agenda here. Couple items. They're going to take longer than others. So I might go out of order, and I know Justin Johnson is going to join us. There's some human services bills that I wanted to talk about. So we start week 4 this week. I've mentioned before, we're approaching the policy committee cutoff on February 17th, and the fiscal committee cutoff is 1 week later. Just to remind you of the important dates that we're approaching. Moving on the list there with the Spokane specific legislative agenda items. None of these are new to you. Just some updates on those. The Senate version of the condo liability bill had its hearing last week. It's not scheduled for exec yet, but I've heard that bill is moving. 5057, the energy standards in commercial buildings. The Senate version had a hearing last week. Interestingly enough, the governor's office came out pretty opposed to the bill, not wanting the delay. And remember, this is the bill that sets up the delay for the complying with the standards and puts in place a work group. So like I said, the governor's office was against the delay. Some of the contractors that are involved in this on the side of installing equipment didn't want to see a delay, but then the other folks, similarly situated to you all, were in favor of a delay and setting up the work group. Right now, the language in the bill does not include counties as a representative of the work group that we've been told we will be. And so waiting to see that happen as the bill gets voted from committee. It has not been scheduled for a committee vote though yet. And then next on the vehicular pursuits, the House version 1363 has a hearing tomorrow. I will sign you all in favor of that bill as one of our legislative agenda items. So we'll have to see how that goes. You'll remember we talked about there is a issue in the Senate with the chair of the committee that oversees those issues. Doesn't believe there's enough data to support the bill at this point, and there is a different bill that would look to study the issue further that has been introduced, and I've heard that one has the potential to move through the Senate. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Do you have any questions about those agenda items?
Any questions? Yep, not seeing any at this point.
Okay. The next 2 are the ones that I need Justin's help on, but it's okay with you, commissioners. I think some of these others are just updates. So if I can just go through those real quickly, maybe that's a better use of time.
Yeah, and then Justin is on the Zoom, Mike, just so you know. Okay.
Right. I see him there. So going down to the 4th one, that's the sale or lease of the manufactured mobile home communities. Remember, we've talked about that bill. Worried about the impact it could have on your BRAC efforts up there in the West Plains. The House version has not moved, but the Senate version is scheduled for exec on the 1st of this month, which is Wednesday. And I have reached out to the prime sponsor about the concerns that I relayed to the House prime sponsor. Was acknowledged in my comments, but do not have any certainty as to whether or not the bill will be amended. So going to continue to work on that. Wanted to give you the update there. On the capital facilities plan part, that's the next bill down there, 1181 and 5203. Just kind of in a holding pattern there. Have not heard any indications back yet from the folks at WASAC who I'm working this issue through. I think I mentioned to most of you last week when I saw you individually that a standalone bill was not likely to receive success. So I think this is the best avenue to go down. working with staff, with the association that has been engaged in this issue all the way back to 2 years ago, and again last year. So we'll update you as that one continues to move. The local permit review process, this is the one that has some building permit timeline issues in it. And I heard from one of your staff members that there might be some concerns about, some of the permit timelines and speeding them up. I need to get a better understanding of that, and we'll check with him, but just wanted to flag that one for you. This is something that the broad building community and the Association of Counties are all in favor of. So I need to straighten out what our specific interest is. Jeff McMorris, if you're there, you saw the same email I did. I have not talked to, I think it's James Moore, correct? I haven't spoken to him directly about it yet. I don't know if you have anything you can fill in there. If not, that's fine. We'll continue to pay attention to it. No?
Jeff, no comment.
I can forward the email around.
It was like a one sentence.
Yeah.
You sent the one
Wasn't a lot of
sentence
detail.
email. I forwarded
We'll
it
get,
around. GSI was also talking about it on their call last week, so I'll grab my notes on that and send it around.
we'll get.
Yeah, like I said, I just need to get my head around better the staff's concern. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but in looking at the email, it seemed that speeding up the timelines and shrinking the amount of days could be problematic for the office. I'm maybe oversimplifying that, and just want to make sure that's a concern that you as a board of commissioners would share, in addition. So, okay, we'll have more work to do there, to dig into that. A quick one, that received
Just a second, Mike.
But Mike, before you move on those, I see that it looks like both the Senate and House version of that bill have had hearings.
Yeah.
It's the House version. All it says is executive action was taken, so I assume it advanced out.
Yeah.
If it was up for exec, what was sort of did anybody testify against it, or does this look like one of those bills that is gonna probably sail through?
By my estimation, Commissioner, this looks like one that's moving, and moving pretty quickly. As you mentioned, there is the House version that's moving as well. And remember, this is a governor request bill. This is all kind of lumped in with the housing issue and speeding up the timeframes for which housing can be built in this case, because of the permits. And this was also the one, I believe, this is the one too that the bill would exclude interior alterations from the site plan review. So it would limit the scope, I think, of the building permits. And again, that might be an oversimplification of it specifically, but yes, Commissioner, long way of me answering that the bills are moving. And so I want to get straight again, if there is a concern on the timeline on your part. So maybe that's something we can dig into a little further next week.
So this is, what's that?
The bill just says its permits have to be out in 45 days, right?
Well, it's not that simple,
Isn't there
Commissioner.
also fines if you don't? If I recall correctly, on the GSI call, they said there were fines if you don't meet that,
Yeah.
and that was some of the concerns.
Yeah, it's that I think it's if you commit to the 45 days, you can get some sort of grant funding from the state, and yeah, you're fine if you don't hit those. But I mean, we hit 45 days, right? I mean, when we're firing on all cylinders, we're like 10 to 14 days when everything's working on properly.
Yeah, so I understand it, and I think, Wednesday night, Denny Heck talked a little bit about this in terms of, this is more of an I-5 corridor issue than it is our side, because there's so many multiple agencies that just kind of drag their feet in terms of getting permits done. And so, while we're permitting things in, 30 to 45 days, it's taking half a year to get permitted over in Seattle and stuff. So this is what he was talking about in terms of our regulatory environment is standing in the way of us producing more housing and stuff. So it really is more the other side of the state issue than it is us.
Okay. Well, Commissioner, like I said, I just heard from some of your staff that there might be a concern. I want to be respectful of that. So maybe I can work with Jeff and clarify some of that, and go from there, and we can revisit next week. Does that sound okay?
Yes, and hopefully we can have James here next
Yeah.
week.
Okay. The next one, 1318, I think I might have sent you the bill report on that one. This is just one that deals with the aircraft maintenance and repair facility that's being built. I can't remember the name of the company up at the airport. It's a sales tax credit bill for them. There is a local component to this that it would be a net revenue loss to the county. But we have supported this project in the past. Wanted to flag it for you because it does have a local interest to it. And wanted to know if you have any thoughts about that, if we want to weigh in on it. For your reference, other Spokane interests are in favor of the bill, for whatever that's worth to you.
Yeah, this is Aeroflight is looking to expand their operation, consolidate here in Spokane. So it is a significant increase in not only the volume of maintenance work that will go through the airport, but also increase the number of employees and stuff. And so I think the revenue hit that we hit on the sales tax side of it is de minimis compared to the other economic values that it provides to the region, especially the aerospace sector. We've been trying to get more manufacturing here in Spokane, and this is one of those operations that's here and looking for a break. If they don't get any kind of break from the state, they'll move to another state. So.
Okay, is that a bill then, commissioners, that we would like to go on record supporting as it moves through the process?
I would say so, and the airport is supporting it as well, the airport lobbyist.
So other commissioners?
I spoke with Todd Woodard about it when we were over in Olympia. Seems like a good project. There's probably a return, if we make that investment, we're gonna get a return on it back to the county.
Yep.
So I think it's a good project. To get Aeroflight, all of their, I think it's like tripling from when they first started
Yep.
their operations.
Yep.
I think it looks like people are in favor of you signing in support.
Okay, and then also commissioners know that I'm gonna do some communication with the delegation members, probably email them certain bills that we've been talking about with your positions, and this is one that I would include in that as a heads up. So, the last note there on the waste to energy facility, we had talked about the potential of legislation, touch base with my colleagues that work for the city. At this point, it looks like the plan is to go with a budget proviso to do some study work, gather more information about it, and come back to revisit this issue with the legislature. I think there's probably, there's a couple issues with this. I mean, this goes all the way back to seeking an exemption from 937 for that. You'll remember the clean, the renewables initiative. This, it's politically charged for one, and then the tie-in now with the Climate Commitment Act. There's a apprehension to alter projects and give exemptions. So at this, the approach of going for a study is probably the best one right now in terms of its success rate for in the future. So wanted to give you that update, and we'll look for that language in the budget. If you have any questions, happy to answer them there.
I'm not seeing
Okay.
any. Thank you.
All right. So I went through those four there on the bottom. Yeah. So please, back to the top of the other topics portion. Two bills there, competency evaluations, that is a large concern for the Association of Counties that will have impact on you. And then the second one, House Bill 1515, that's the contracting and procurement requirements. That bill is a WASAC priority. It's one that's on your agenda in favor of. I'll let Justin tell you what it does mechanically. I have a difficult time understanding all of it, but it's a cost savings, administrative burden relief type thing, I believe, for Justin and his folks. So if it's okay with you, I would like to punt to him to give you the brief on those two more specifically than I did.
That'll be great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Justin.
Excellent. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, starting with the House Bill 1515, really looks at procurement for Medicaid services, specifically to behavioral health. And there's two areas within the bill that are really the key areas that we want to support. prior to procurement and then what happens during the procurement process. So currently, the state is under a process for procurement for Medicaid with a end date of 2025 for selection. This bill comes in advance of that to say, all right, how is that process going to look and what should it include? One of the key areas there, forcing the healthcare authority to include counties and the ASOs in the process of selection, specifically as it applies to behavioral health component within Medicaid. So more regional and county representation in the selection process, as opposed to being separate. So that's one of the, I think, key areas why it's imperative we support this. It also requires the state to do a review of network adequacy of those that are bidding for those services, and for ensuring that there is going to be sufficient coverage for crisis services and continuum of care. So really adding in very strict components within the procurement process to both better support frontier rural communities and the counties where those services will be put into place. They're hoping to put this in prior to the procurement, which may delay that. So that's one key thing that may occur, is it may push out procurement past 2025. Again, unclear until this goes into place. So those are some of the key ones for that bill. And then
Just,
I
just I just want to make sure. So we're talking about procurement for the MCOs.
correct, for Medicaid. That's correct.
And,
Not for the ASOs.
okay, and then just, talking to somebody over the weekend who's a provider, that they've had issues with their MCOs. So are they going to be looking at that? Is that part of what you're saying, that they're going to be looking at what those issues and concerns have been from providers as well as they go forward?
Correct. There will be a requirement for them to include participation with providers in the network. So 2 key points. They have to examine what is the network needs within a region. And one other key area there too is, does the amount of MCOs within the region, so like 5 in ours, does it actually reduce cost and administrative burden for those providers? Or should it be reduced to allow for only a few within those regions? So that's another area that they're trying to address the frontier rural community needs as it pertains to, because we have 4 and we had no choice. We had to accept those. This requires them to actually examine the need.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on 1515?
So is it just related to companies that provide the behavioral health, or both medical and behavioral?
Since it's integrated, it is for, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if every MCO also provided behavioral. Is that a requirement now?
Yes, as part of the integrated care, it's medical and the behavioral health component. This one really just focuses on that behavioral health need and the requirement for the services therein.
Okay, I think we're good.
Excellent. And then the 5440 Senate bill, that one really is just an awareness and concern, as Mike had mentioned. The requirement for the counties to take on the bulk of responsibility for the misdemeanor diversion on the front end, and then alternative therapeutic units, which we created as part of this program within detention services or a jail-based setting, and then having the county be the responsible party for not only funding that, but also providing the treatment and care. It also shifts misdemeanors and Class C felonies to those services instead of going through the state process within the state hospital. Again, the governor's initiative to push this from the state into the counties. And again, the concern really there is, we are only tracking this because of behavioral health involvement, is the challenge with the counties taking on the financial and administrative responsibilities associated with what the state is currently providing.
Commissioner French.
How does this effort comply with the True Blood decision and the responsibility of the state to provide these services?
Mike, do you want to touch on that? You want me to?
Well, Commissioner, it's definitely tied in with True Blood and the reaction to that. But I can't answer that question. But I do know that this is all interrelated to that. And I had heard the same about that Justin had, the concern here is it's a big cost shift to counties. It's the state pushing services down onto you. And, that fits in some ways into the unfunded mandate category. Maybe it's not totally synonymous, but that's the concern here. But I'm gonna have to get back to you about the interplay and specifically how this interplays with true blood. But you're on the right track. This is absolutely related.
Yeah. From what we've heard from the senator's office who was pushing this, Senator Dengraph, it was the state's attempt to say, we can't build our way out of this with new facilities. So if we shift the responsibility, then currently with the states under, the wait times and the fines would then be the responsibility shared with counties. So I think it's more of a responsibility shift than it is. But that's, again, what we've heard. It isn't yet what we've heard from the governor's office directly.
Okay, no other questions or comments?
So, well, commissioners, I'll relay to you then, when it comes to 1515, I'm going to add that to our list of things that I'll be signing in on or relaying to the delegation that we're supportive of. But we'll get some more clarity on 5440.
Commissioner French?
So, are you saying that the House Bill 1515, you're suggesting that we're supportive of?
Yes, Commissioner, it's a WASAC priority. It was one that you all approved as part of your legislative agenda. At that time, though, it did not have a bill number.
Okay.
Am I not understanding that properly? That it is something you're in favor of?
It's going to give us more control over that
Yeah,
process for the MCOs.
Yeah, I think the conversation, as I remember it, was that I thought we were in support with concerns, and the question was, are we going to have somebody from counties at the table as part of the negotiation or not? Because I think this is one of several initiatives where county interests aren't being represented. But I could be wrong. I could be confusing a couple of the bills, because I know there's a number of bills that are going through that have a direct impact on counties, but we don't have anybody at the table representing our interests. So,
Justin, can you respond to that? Because I thought you said the counties were going to be involved in the process.
Correct. Yeah, as part of 1515, if it passes,
Okay.
it would require the state to include them. Yeah.
okay, then never mind.
Okay. So then, yes, I think we're in support.
Okay. Well, that gives me what I need on those bills from Justin, and we'll certainly revisit 5440 and get some clarity to the question that Commissioner French asked, or the comment he made. So that's it for those two. Thank you, Justin, for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Then the
Justin.
last one wanted to get your thoughts on is 5627. This is the commissioner salaries issue. I sent a link to that bill back. So this is coming out of Thurston County. I think it looks to be kind of a housekeeping issue, because they went from the 3 commissioners to 5, or I think they're a year behind you all.
And
Maybe Ashley has a comment.
she's got, so Thurston did pass, Thurston voted to approve going to 5 commissioners in November. So this year will be the year that then they all have to be elected.
I can speak to this bill a bit though, Mike, if you wanted me to. I've been
Please.
working very closely with
Yeah.
Jim Amacio and Vicki Dalton. Commissioners, are you okay if I give a little bit of update on that?
Yes, and Vicki's in the room as well.
Oh,
Oh,
perfect.
great.
She made it. So Vicki, if you wanted to lead it, go for it. I didn't see you in the corner of my screen.
And Ashley, just a second, Commissioner French had a comment he wanted to make first.
Yeah, there's a difference in terms of them going to 5 commissioners and us going to 5 commissioners, because they went to 5 commissioners under Senator Padden's bill from, over a decade ago, where they could go to 5, but that doesn't change the configuration of how they get elected. So they're still by district in the primary and countywide in the general.
I don't think so. The bill that passed that forced us to go had the proviso that if you were 300 and above, it was a vote by the people to have them choose to go to it. And so they just did the vote to the people this November.
So I thought it was 400 and above, but
No, for us, you're required to, 300 to 400, you had to go to a vote of the people.
Okay, because the other bill also goes to a vote of the people to go to 5, and there's a difference in terms of the structuring of the districts and stuff. So I was just having a conversation last Thursday with one of the commissioners from Thurston County. And she was trying to explain what they did versus what we did. And their interpretation, her interpretation was that they are still elected primary by district, general, and countywide, and the general is how she framed it. I mean, she just didn't understand the difference in the nuances between what they offered up. That's possible. But her and I just had this conversation last Thursday and stuff, because I was sharing with her some of the challenges we were having with regard to the fact that state legislature, a lot of the bills, RCWs, don't recognize the 5 commissioner without being a charter. And so, but I'll circle back and find out on Wednesday.
I'd have to look at how they put it on the
Yeah.
ballot, if how they set it up that way. But the bill that forced us had a proviso that if it was 300 to 400, you could do a vote.
Okay.
So I don't know, then they had to follow those rules. So, Vicki.
I will check with the Thurston County Auditor to verify their final structure. So in moving to 5 commissioner districts, RCW 3617-024 is no longer functional because it only talks about 3 districts, and it sets the limit of the number of members in the salary commission to 10, which is 6 members from the voter rolls and 4 members from professional industry. And that just, the math simply doesn't work with 5 districts. So Thurston County is taking lead on this. The bill that was dropped was an earlier version. We weren't expecting this particular version to drop, so there are still changes that need to be made. The likeliest scenario that we're working on is that in non-charter counties like ourselves, there would be 1 commission member selected from each of the 5 districts. One of the other possibilities is that we also have another member selected from the voter rolls at large. And that would bring to 6, which is the same number we have now, for those members selected from the voter rolls. It would still retain the 4 members selected from industry by the board. That was at one point accidentally, this is an older version, it wasn't in here, it's supposed to be in here. So we're working on adding that back in, and Thurston County is in agreement with that. And one really big problem is that language was picked up out of another section of RCWs to allow for the referendum measure, which is currently allowed in the current version of 3617-024, but it's way out of date for vote by mail. And the additional language they picked up from another section of RCWs is still way out of date for vote by mail. So we are working on getting information in there that would update it so it works for vote by mail, but we do have a question for you. Thurston County has been talking about having the referendum just occur in the general election. So a referendum requires a petition, it requires signatures, it requires verification. And currently the filing deadline for that is the primary election day. So if you miss the primary election day for turning in the petition and getting all the signatures verified, it would then move the election to the next year. So it could be as long as 1.5 years before the decision is made as to whether the voters support the salary change or not. So I would highly recommend that we support allowing the referendum to be voted on during a special election. And to accommodate Thurston, we could include language that it is up to the board to decide which election it goes to. So we do need your feedback on that particular item. So that's it in a nutshell.
I'm assuming you need feedback quickly.
Yeah. because I think it's already scheduled for a hearing. This one's gonna move, and it's gonna move fast.
That's for.
So, well, Commissioner, just from a timing standpoint, it'll be on today's intros sheet, so it's not scheduled for a hearing, but your auditor's probably hearing that it will be. Somebody probably told her that it will be this week, and that does not surprise me. The prime sponsor is Senator Hunt from Olympia, so I'm sure he'll get his bill heard. Just some background there.
Thank you, Mike.
So I guess, I mean, I would go with the suggestion you have, where if we do the referendum, the board chooses the date that the election that it goes on.
I see no reason not to go with your recommendation.
Yes.
The only downside to that is, if it goes to a special election, it will be costly. Because generally the county doesn't go onto a February or an April ballot. And, you know, that could be about $350,000.
So,
It's the only one.
so the referendum is just if, it doesn't have to be done each time, does it?
No, the referendum is only if a group of people get together, file a petition, get enough signatures, and it requires 15%. And I can't remember if that's 15% of all registered voters or 15%.
The previous election.
Yeah, and I don't have that easily in front of me, but I'll take a look at it.
So it's still a harder process.
It would still be a very difficult process for a petition to be successful, because they only have, I think it's either 30 or 60 days.
This is 30.
I've been through so many versions now, it's kind of hard to remember which one's which.
Commissioner French.
Do we, if we have the board pick the election date, do we set ourselves up for being criticized for picking one election over another and because of the composition of voter turnout? Whereas if it's just the next election, then you don't have anybody accusing you of trying to manipulate the electorate by picking an election that might favor one side of the issue or the other.
And that is a way to go, is to make it not optional, that it has to go to the next election
From when they file the,
from when the signatures are verified.
And
you
you're saying that the other side is that if it's
it's
a
like
special election, then it's gonna be
$350,000
very expensive.
or if there's nothing else on the ballot.
So if you guys want to think about it and get back to Ashley and I in the next few days, that would be fine. But we do need to get the amendment drafted and in as quickly as possible, because we do want to get this cleaned up in its first hearing. So that probably will give us maybe a week and a half at the most.
Is there any other, what's the, is there precedent around, like what is, I'm trying to remember when any kind of initiative is filed and signatures are confirmed, what's the usual, I'm trying to think at the city, is there still discretion on behalf of the body usually to place, when to place that on? Is it always the next election? Or just trying to think of like, what other examples do we have in
Different
Spokane?
initiatives and different referendum have different.
And every charter can set it up
Requirements.
differently in every
And-
community. Okay.
And to give you an idea, there's a lot of the initiatives have a 6-month window. This has a 30-day
Oh,
window,
yeah,
and
which
it's
is-
15% of the registered voters. The likelihood of success is very small, because we're at 300 and, let's call it 360,000 right now. So that would be a significant number of signatures. Valid signatures.
And special election, but thus the only one on the ballot is, she was saying 350,000, is that what you were saying?
The minimum would probably be 350,000, because remember, we now pay for return postage.
Right,
Yeah.
which would be more expensive than the cumulative impact of the pay raise being contemplated.
It's just the possibility of a significant delay before the retro pay is provided. It could also put us into a situation, if it is delayed past the end of the year, then we could be doing retro pay to a commissioner who's no longer serving.
No longer serving.
So that's some of my concerns. Even if we did it in February, we could still have that situation. Even if there was an election in February, we would still have that possibility that we're paying a retro to a commissioner who's no longer an employee. It's possible.
If you're
Highly
saying,
unlikely.
so you're saying if the choice was up to the commissioners and you had it on a November ballot, but if we had it on the next available ballot, you would have less chance of that happening.
No, I'm saying getting 15% valid signatures.
Oh, I thought you meant the back pay thing.
Oh, no.
But- Okay.
Commissioners, I think it's also, Vicky noted the retro pay, but there's also an overpay situation as well. So keeping both sides of those pay in mind, the longer that this kicks out, to Ms. Dalton's point, the more impact it has on what payroll processes have to occur and over what duration of time.
So no matter what, there will have to be an amendment submitted very quickly. And then if it turns out that you guys want to go a different direction, we can always amend it in either floor or in the next chamber. So keep in mind, this does take a while to get through the legislature, thankfully.
And your auditors group is addressing this as well.
Only a handful of us are involved because there's only 2 counties right now that are impacted. But there are other counties that likely will be impacted in the next several years. And so we are trying to bring them into the fold once there is a hearing scheduled.
So when we share a ballot with other elections, how much does the cost go down?
It's proportional, and it's based on the number of registered voters. So if the county goes at 360,000 registered voters and a small school district like Orchard Prairie goes with only a few thousand registered voters, we're still covering most of the cost. But if we were to go with the city of Spokane and School District 81 at the same time, along with Fire District 1, then we're down to only about half of the cost. So that's why when people call us up and say, how much is it gonna cost to put something on the ballot? We say, depends. Who else is going on with you? So we don't know that until filing day is finished.
We've been in contact with the bill's prime sponsor.
The Thurston County Auditor is in contact very frequently, and we have every expectation that the prime sponsor will bring in whatever amendments we.
Okay.
It was just important to get this bill filed so it would get on the schedule to get hearings.
Because it's his bill and it's going through his committee that he chairs, so I was gonna say if he's against, well, I was gonna say if he's against it, your odds aren't good at all. So somebody better be talking to him, so.
Yes, that's why the expectation is that this bill will be heard quickly.
Yeah.
And it will not be delayed in executive session.
Yeah, I guess I'm just leaning, like, whatever, I think our taxpayers would want it to be as financially prudent choice as possible, but I'm not sure what choice that is. The next available one or the choice of the commissioners, because it could go either way. With the costs, if they mount up, you just don't know.
So I'm gonna throw one more thing out there, which might not be very popular with anybody. But the other thing could be to put in the bill exactly when the salary commission will meet. Because at that point, if we can control the calendar, then we would be able to ensure that the referendum, the petition, And the validation of the signatures would be done in time for qualifying for the general election. So that's another option. We don't have that written up.
Commissioners, so I'll clarify, I went to local government, not state. Senator Hunt chairs state government, but Commissioner Kearns' point is correct. The bill's gonna move, and I think, Vicki, you've heard the same. So, you know, we need to weigh in with what we want it to look like and get that language in. It doesn't sound like there'd be a problem doing that in terms of our language being included. We just need to do that.
Well, the other factor that would have to be considered is that if you were to put it on a spring ballot when the schools districts go out and you got a referendum that's basically an anti-government referendum because you're going to bring out a whole different profile of voters that might not be supportive of school bonds and stuff. And so there's a ripple effect about how this might affect who shows up to vote and what their leaning will be with regard to their voting and stuff. So you've got that to worry about as well.
Well, would you like me to float the idea with
to me,
Thurston about
yeah.
setting the exact dates?
I think the
things
general
like
election
that?
really does make the most sense because there's the most items on the election. It's being shared by multiple jurisdictions. So yeah, I would float that idea.
Okay.
Because that seems like then you would set it up for an election when you have the most participation from all walks of political life.
Okay, I'm good with that. Anything else, Ashley?
No, and I like that idea as well. I think it would be helpful if we were on a similar schedule with other counties. So from a comp and an HR perspective, I think that's a great idea.
And it provides certainty for everybody. So I'll check with Thurston, see what they think. How do you guys feel about the one at-large member chosen from the voter registration rolls? You can get back to me on that, but that is another question.
Again, with it doing the change, I mean, because it's a random selection that is done, auditor's office does, so I'm fine with that.
That seems fine.
And then I know in past years you've allowed me to lean on Mike, and I hope that I get to do that again this year because I'm not joking. There's been a couple of times in the past 6 or 7 years where a phone call from Mr. Burgess has literally saved the auditors some incredible pain. So I appreciate the ability to work with Mike on legislative issues.
Good, you're good with that, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. Back on that bill. So it sounds like the issue we have is the date of the election. Am I hearing that right?
I think so.
So from Spokane County's perspective, we're still mulling over which date of the election we think is best. Like the makeup of the commission, you're good with. And I'm asking this because if it gets scheduled for a hearing, I'm going to need to go in and make that comment to the committee, and I want to point to the issue that we're working through.
Yeah, I think we're wanting to see if the calendar can get set on it, so that way it ends up on the general election.
So it'd be fair to say to the committee, we're weighing the options of a date certain or an election certain of which election we think is best for this to go out to the public.
I think so. Ashley, you've got your hand up too.
Yeah, I think, Mike, we're specifically looking at that number 7 section of the referendum. And so in there, I know that there's been a lot of draft language going back and forth, but that's where we're specifically, I think, looking at right now. So that just one paragraph very much talks about the election, the special election, general election, 60 days. It's that number 7.
Ashley, could you do me a favor and email me just so you and I can email contact each other?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get together today. So Jim and I will get together today, get some language drafted up, get it sent off to Ashley to take a look at, and then we will get it back out to all of you and Mike to take a look at. And we'll also be working with Thurston County to see if they're on board with it.
And I'll let my counterpart with Thurston, who's been in contact with me about it, know that, again, we're good with those other sections. It looks like it's this section 7 that's in question, and date specific elections versus, we're trying to narrow down which election we think works best. Okay,
And just
thank
making
you.
sure
That's helpful.
The at-large member is already in there.
The at-large, in what was dropped does not have the at-large. We've talked about it with Thurston, and I think they're leaning towards having an at-large.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you understand that, Mike, as well?
Yeah, so we need to add in, the at-large members as well.
So there's 5 by district and then 1 at large for the citizens.
Yeah,
Where do the
and-
other 4 come from?
The other 4 are already,
Industry.
yeah, they're industry, and there's specific industries that we have to have them from.
Oh, so that's already prescriptive?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be in the final version that,
But it did make it into the bill that got dropped, because it was a very early version.
it wasn't
Yeah.
in the bill that got dropped, so does that make sense?
I can acknowledge that part, that I assume we'll be in agreement with there'll be a substitute bill, full in agreement with the makeup of the commission. It's just again, the election dates, timing that's in question.
Do
Yeah,
we,
at this point, we're at a striker.
do we know the at-large appointee wasn't left out on purpose, so there's a 9-member board as opposed to a 10 being an even number? I mean, maybe that was done intentionally, so you have an odd number of people on the committee?
The problem is the laws that exist now says there will be 10 members.
Okay, so this
So-
wouldn't, okay.
Yeah, this has gone back and forth so many times that right now I don't think anybody knows what version we're actually on for agreement, so we need to get that hammered out in just the next couple of days.
Okay, so you don't think this is their way of changing it from 10 to 9 to prevent a stalemate?
No, and as Ashley can.
Which we know is very unlikely to happen, but, you know.
And as Ashley can tell you, not everybody shows up for the meetings, so you have no idea if you're gonna have an even number of people actually there and voting, or if you're gonna have an odd number of people there and voting. So there's no point to try to aim the total membership at an odd or an even number, it doesn't matter.
And additionally, though, we did ask to at least try to keep it around that 10 mark, because if you do start getting more than that, and for some reason they do all show up, the larger these groups get, compensation is a very difficult subject to teach quickly. And so we're hopeful that we can keep it around that 10 mark and not go above that, since it does take a large amount of work effort to help our citizens understand the backstory and the background as they're adequately assessing and recommending compensation.
Okay, I think we're clear.
That gives me everything I needed today, commissioners, unless you have any other issues you wanted to raise.
Just a second, Scott.
Back to that House Bill 5290. I got a little bit more information. As I read that, Mike, that House Bill is principally around establishing a grant program through Commerce that will encourage jurisdictions to meet these timelines, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so our team is supportive of it. The question is more of a detailed in the weeds, and it's what starts the clock ticking on an application. We have situations where an applicant will put something in our portal, but they haven't completed it yet, so the clock's not starting ticking. It may sit there for 2 days, may sit there for 20. I told him that's likely something that will get worked out through work groups that Commerce will have when they start developing this grant, if that's fair. So I think general support from here, just kind of some questions on to how it would actually get implemented.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I think that closes the loop on that for me. So appreciate that, Scott. Thanks.
Okay, very good. And Mike, thank you for being a great host while we were all there with GSI and helping everyone get to the different meetings and yes.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned to each of you individually, I'll say it to the group, that, when you want to come back, give me a couple, 3 weeks notice, and, we can get things scheduled. I have a scheduler that helps me do that. It's a hard task to get legislative appointments you know. So I want to make your time worth it when you're there. So put your heads together and kind of figure out when you want to be there, and I'll do my best to accommodate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a nice day. See ya. Bye.
So we're running a little behind, sorry, thank you. So Gavin Cooley and Rick Romero.
Morning.
Come up, good morning, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good.
Good.
So Jim is inspiring us retirees to come back and volunteer here.
It's pretty amazing.
I'm gonna pass around one pager here on what we're working on. I didn't think it passed that. Yep. I think just real quickly, I think most of you know Rick Romero and myself, Gavin Cooley, and we're just helping facilitate a conversation around the idea of a regional collaborative authority to help manage the homelessness situation in the Spokane region. And so we've envisioned for quite some time having a 90-day period in which we would talk about and review and come up with ideas and present to the community what that might look like. At this stage, it's really formative. And so we've had a lot of individual conversations with many of you, but we're getting to this point of really wanting to formalize communications and how we present information and how we gather information. So we thought this would be a great time to come down and talk to all of you and kind of give you an update on what we're doing, but likewise get input from you. I think you may have heard that we had this 210, we were calling it a launch for this. Really, a launch is kind of a strong word for a due diligence period, but that's what we've been talking about. And originally, the idea was to try to get just a lot of people excited about working together and collaborating on this idea, because it's astonishingly complex, this homelessness response system that we have in Spokane or in any region. The more we looked at that, the more it was clear that there's no way we could possibly include everybody the way we would like to. So rather than try to invite everybody to some kind of event where we got excited about working together, we're really kind of scaling back and thinking more of a press release and just making sure we get adequate distribution and talk about really the manner in which we'll receive input and what that public outreach looks like, the outreach to the providers, the outreach to the many people involved with this, and fundamentally the outreach to the jurisdictions that are so involved in this now and are interfacing with HUD and other organizations. So really the city, the county, and we've also been meeting with the Valley to see if we can't, at least as the three most significant jurisdictions in the region, get together on moving forward, and then gather everybody else, as best we can as we go forward. We've seen this kind of regional collaborative approach only in a very few places across the country. Fundamentally, Houston, Atlanta, and King County, Seattle is taking a stab at it. And what seems to make it work is when you can get everybody under that umbrella working together, naturally you have these synergies, financially, organizationally, and even strategically, everybody working off the same page to begin to manage homelessness, not solve it, but manage it properly. And so, in the last 10 years, we've seen about a 64% increase in Spokane. Houston has seen almost the exact opposite decrease. But that's not to say that the Houston model or Atlanta or anybody else is what we're going to do. One significant difference is Houston includes in their coalition for homelessness, they include only the housing first participants in their community. We'd be looking at including that, but others too. A notable would be UGM, Family Promise, and others that don't follow that model. Getting everybody under that umbrella working together is kind of the key. So that might be one of the significant differences. And there's a lot of others. in Houston, again, just using them as an example, they went back to a long-standing nonprofit to lead the organization, or to lead the initiative. The Coalition for Homelessness is a nonprofit. And we've looked at a number of options, and we'll look a lot more at different options. King County has a different approach to it also. We floated out the idea of a public development authority just because we have familiarity with that. We've had success with that. So it's something worth talking about, but it's absolutely not necessarily what we would go with. And we may even turn to the state and say, hey, we need certain other powers and authorities statutorily, and is there something you can come up with that's specifically tailored to a homelessness response? So there's a lot going on, but we just wanted to appear here and kind of give you that update, talk about this one pager, which will probably remain in draft formation for a long time to come. Talk a little bit about that due diligence period, and then just maybe get some input on how we can continue to stay in touch with you. We'd like to do the same thing with the city, maybe bi-weekly, just brief appearances to answer questions and kind of coordinate, or however you see it. So, Rick, am I missing any key points?
No, I think that's a great overview, and Teresa Sanders and myself will be working with Gavin, and it certainly isn't because of our expertise on the homelessness issue, but we have worked together before on a number of partnership and collaborative types of initiatives in our region, and we just really believe this is one that is begging for that type of approach. So we're volunteering our time to try to work through this, and like Gavin says, really just try to facilitate a process to get to an outcome that we think is going to be a better solution.
And to get the people that know about it, working together. That Rick makes a great point. Of course, we don't have expertise in this area. It seems like every presentation or conversation I've had in the last few months involves people that know a whole lot more about the homeless response system than I do or ever will. But the idea is, how do we get everybody working together and moving forward in the same direction to get those kinds of outcomes we've seen in Houston, or actually not too many places. You could name on one hand the places that have actual decreases over the last 2 years or 10 years. We'd like to be in that place where we see large decreases.
So a couple of questions, because we did have one meeting that representatives from the city, county, and I were there, the city of the Valley was there, city of Spokane, and so a lot of the questions that we had at that point, I haven't heard anything, but so what are you really wanting in this 90 days? Because at the end of 90 days, what is your plan to come back and talk to us? Because are you wanting us to commit ahead of that? I guess that was a question that was still lingering for me. Is what is your expectation as you're seeking us to? Are you seeking our approval to say go ahead and start to look at this? Or are you just saying you're going to go look at it, and at the end of 90 days you're going to be coming back and you're going to be keeping us informed along the way?
Yeah, I think really it's a collaborative back and forth process. It's going to be recommendations based on all these conversations and things we're seeing. So definitely not, updates, yes, but receiving feedback and direction and, what looks good to the commissioners, what looks, the city, and try to pull all those together into some recommendations, generally based on these guiding principles of, that we've laid out in this one pager. But I think, it's fundamentally about just establishing that communication process so that we can come up with recommendations that reflect what we would like to see as a region in something like this. So yeah, you're right. We've been hesitant to have answers at this point because it's mostly been trying to get everybody just up to speed on the idea that we're even going to talk about it, which sounds like a remarkably simple proposition, but has not been that.
Well, and I think, just when we were doing the regional governance group a couple of years ago, I think I told you this, that, we had, it was hard to figure out what the real dollars were. And so trying to have that financial information to know what it is, because and it was just last week, the King County Authority said they wanted $8 billion in capital. and another 3.5 billion to operate. There's not billions of dollars. And there's also laws that are making it more attractive for people to be in the state of Washington than to be in other places. So I'm still, part of the thought process that these are not all just our own homeless people that are here. And really it's like, what are we doing to keep people from becoming homeless? I mean, to me, it's the upstream effects that are better places to be putting our dollars, so they don't become homeless. And so that was like one of the questions that we were talking about at that meeting. And
So one of the things we would come to you, for instance, with, resources are key, being able to work with the county. And so Ken Moore would be the kind of guy that would help us understand the systems that are out there and the opportunities, for integration and bringing systems together. We're going to be working with James Caddy over at the city, who's great at data and can lay things out with Power BI and folks here to lay out all, we really, as far as I can tell, nobody understands those numbers or those figures or has so how can we possibly make recommendations without having some clarity on what the underlying data looks like? So that would be one of the key initiatives, and therefore one of the key things we would be doing coming here, asking for help and assistance in assembling that.
Well, and I was just thinking about this over the weekend, and it seems to me one of the things that we lack the most of, and it's opportunistic that we, I think yesterday just finished our point in time count, but data seems to be the gray matter out there that nobody can get their arms around, and without fully understanding that, it's difficult to structure a program to address a need when you can't quantify the need, kind of a deal. So, I appreciate you mentioned Ken Moore. I think Ken is a great person to be part of something like this. He's very analytical, but he's also he's got some experience in working across the aisle and working in a collaborative environment and stuff. So I'd be more than happy to offer up him, if that's the will of the rest of the board, to help in this initiative. With regard to keeping abreast of what you're doing, a bi-weekly report back would be great, because I'm getting more and more questions on the street saying, well, it looks like you guys are doing this, and I'm going, that's news to me, kind of a deal and stuff. So it'd be really, really beneficial to be able to keep up with what you're doing, so that when we get to the finish line, we're at least all on the same train, as opposed to, oh, this is where we ended up at, kind of a deal, and then all of a sudden having to step back. So
That response, that's news to me. I have that almost every day too. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's so many resources in this room. Even Kat Nichols, Scott referred me over, her understanding the systems, even, precedent for some of the things we would try to accomplish with the work she's done with the VA. Obviously, Jim helping us look at the formations and the pros and cons of the different, we're going to need all of that. We've been able to hire a communications person doing some private fundraising. We've hired Mandy Chapman-Semple, who put together the system in Houston, and so she'll be advising us all the way. And so I think at some point when it's appropriate, having her talk to this group also and get kind of feedback on what she's seeing and how we're, what the opportunities and kind of the SWOT approach to what we as a community see. She seems, we've had quite a few interactions with her already, and she's been cracked up to be. She's really knowledgeable and thoughtful. So I think she'll be a great addition to the team too.
is there a website or some place that we can go to really get a handle on what they did in Houston? I tried to Google it up, and I get sent all over the world, and I'm kind of going, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to ferret through all of this stuff. And is there, like one report or one descriptor of that program?
The Coalition for Homelessness website down there is where it is, but we spent 6 days down there, and Barry and a contingent also went down for a day down there, and they have nothing that online that begins to reflect what we learned when we were down there. It seems to be scattered between their CLC, the city government, 4 counties that are involved. And so, yeah, I actually can't recommend it other than the Coalition for Homelessness website, which captures it at a kind of a high altitude. But yeah, I wish there was. And we're developing a website, and that would be part of the communication also, and would be receiving, feedback from all of you on how to design that and what should be on it.
And as far as your question, Mary, about what would we expect to accomplish in that 90 days, that is a really aggressive timeline to work through a number of really incredibly challenging issues. And just for an example, King County and the city of Seattle, their resolution to the creation was through the Interlocal Cooperation Act. So they did it by contract as opposed to PDA or some other separate district. But it basically took them 18 months with only the 2 entities to get through a process where they stood up a regional authority. We think we're much further ahead than maybe where they started with this, and there seems to be quite a bit of alignment that's coming together across all segments here. But it's going to be a challenge, and we're going to need all the help and resources and efforts. We definitely didn't pick an easy topic to ease back into here out of retirement. So it's going to be a challenge, but we think we can make some progress, and the ultimate goal is to actually get to the ordinances or the documents or the structure that we would want to stand up at the end of 90 days.
So are you, sorry, Chris.
Raise my hand first. I just want to thank you for kickstarting this conversation. I think it's really important. I appreciate your time and energy doing that. I was just wondering if you could give us very briefly the Houston experience in a nutshell of kind of what you saw and what your takeaways were. And then second question would be, as this process goes forward, what do you envision or suggest in terms of community input, talking with providers, talking with people who've had the experience of being homeless and incorporating some of those best ideas into where we may end up?
As far as the Houston model goes, and Anise Parker became the mayor in 2011, and she was a 3-term mayor, and she'd been in the oil and gas industry as an analyst for about 23 years before that, and knew really wasn't anything to do with homelessness. Because of their results, she's been questioned a lot about the Houston model, and she goes into some considerable detail. I mean, their numbers look really good. They are a housing first city. They've housed 26,000 people over this time period. They have remarkable results. The people they've housed with wraparound services, 92% of them remain in that situation 2 years later. But she can go on and on about those numbers, and 95% of people say yes to what's presented to them. They say they don't really believe in shelters at all. There's little semantics there. They call them navigation centers. Thank you. Yeah, make sure you correct me on anything, because you heard it too, Mary. Navigation centers, and so it's kind of a fine line between those two, but the navigation centers are intended to be a maximum 90 days to get people aligned. Everybody has a navigator assigned to them. So if you see an encampment before they decommission, everybody in that encampment has a navigator assigned to them that's been identifying the needs and resources. So not just a roof, but the services to keep them there. 95% of people say yes. To the 5% that say no, there was really kind of a tough love approach. Like, she was not hesitant to say that, for those other 5%, that it was certainly a criminal justice moment, which is a lot less than what other cities are using their criminal justice system for. But it's kind of a carrot and stick kind of thing. And it's certainly borne out by what you see on the downtown landscape. There isn't much visible evidence of homelessness in downtown Houston. As we were leaving one of our interviews with her, I asked, we wanted to actually film an encampment. And she slammed her hand down on the table and said, you won't find an expletive encampment in downtown Houston. And So she's pretty tough, but when asked to distill it down, she says, everybody's always looking for that secret sauce. And she said there is none, other than collaboration and everybody working together, getting them all under one roof and marching to the same script. So, and she said, people find that way too simplistic, but if you've ever tried that in a region, you'll realize there's nothing simplistic or easy about it. That is by far and away the hardest thing. And that's even now certainly what we're seeing, that the conversations around the community are pointing in all directions, and we're getting really significant pushback from every sector. And there's not a group that we've talked to that, at some point doesn't have really strong pushback against the idea of simply coming and working together on something like this.
Well, and I guess I would say, there definitely wasn't anything super, magical or any of that. It was just, the mayor down there is a very strong mayor, form of government, so she really could take control, and she wielded that to get the providers to come along and to play together. I would say, that if they wanted to get funding, she had control of the funding sources. And so it was really having different people, look at things differently. Providers, I will say, as for their continuum of care, that maybe this provider, instead of, we have several providers doing similar things. It's like, who's the provider who can do this part the best? Who's the other one who can take on this piece? And so there was some shifts in what the providers were doing. Their navigation center, that they call it, is similar to what we have at TRAC. So it's really a emergency shelter, but has the wraparound services in there that they know that they're trying to get them there temporarily and then off to another situation for housing. And was really going after the encampments, because in Houston it was a problem under the overpasses. And so, they would give a certain amount of time to say, we're going to be coming into this encampment and we're going to be, closing it down, and we're going to provide services. And they had people out there ahead of time. So it was just, trying to be very purposeful along the way as to what they were doing. But the mayor was the one who really kind of brought everybody together and said, this is going to happen. We're going to make it happen. And the providers then all decided, figured out how to work together collaboratively, I think. Is that a good way to put it?
I think that really sums it up. And the providers got on board after about 2 years. It was a slow phase in. Once they started getting success, a lot of dollars started flowing into the system, federal and private, that they hadn't had access previously. And so she doesn't really feel like the finances were a significant, problem for them. And Mandy, that really the mayor points at Mandy and says, basically Mandy, she blocked and tackled for Mandy, who was really did most of the work on it and organizing around it. And so she's saying the same thing to us as we work with her. As far as the input goes, the second part of your question, we're talking about the website and what that would look like and how that would help gather, use Survey Monkeys and other forms of input. We're talking about the same thing we all know a lot about, which are community meetings and getting out to all the neighborhoods and that sort of thing. And we're interested in whatever you have to say about that input too, because that's going to be really key that people feel heard in this.
And their largest encampment that they had to decommission, I think, was 100. That was the largest one. So most of them were smaller. I think we're used to the numbers that were at Camp Hope. So we kind of had when we were down there, it's like you guys have the largest one in the nation. And different that, again, I always want to say, Camp Hope was very different than what Houston or any of the other cities are seeing, because there was, and I will just say, a quote unquote provider at the time here, kind of managing Camp Hope versus these other encampments across the nation are just pop-ups that are just happening naturally and organically, not purposefully. So just want to make sure there's a true difference between what we saw with our encampment versus other cities' encampments.
And I would say, I think really the key is the integration and perhaps a recognition that this isn't something that can be addressed or dealt with by one individual municipality alone. So therefore, integrated and regional. And I think where there's been success, they've figured out how to create something that stands alone, that's independent, its sole mission is to address and deal with this issue, as opposed to trying to absorb it into, all of the myriad of things that we do in city and county government. So I personally, I think that is incredibly important, because I think it just can't be dealt with in any one entity by itself.
I think we're seeing, I just mentioned, a very natural feeling that, people's feelings are hurt, like we've been working really hard on this, and there's this implied critique of the people involved. But I know of at least 4 heads of community housing and human services at the city who all say the worst collaborative applicant, which the city is on behalf of the Continuum of Care, which is the go-between with HUD, is a city organization like the city of Spokane. And that, having CHHS buried and, with 53 other departments, 13 divisions, 3 major utilities, criminal justice system, and everything else, that's not where you want your collaborative applicant to be. So a lot of it's just that basic premise that a city municipality is not your best vehicle.
Okay, so I've got the 3 commissioners here, so I'm gonna start with Amber and then work my way down.
Oh, I was curious about in Houston, do they have an aggressive affordable housing, permanent supportive housing strategy? Is the building of the housing one of the lines of business of their coalition or their regional governance model?
Yeah, Mike Nichols down there that runs the coalition, who's really kind of a corporate person more than a homelessness expert. He has those kinds of people working with and for him. Is very much about, coordinating, the housing authorities and others that are helping to build that affordable housing. I think we've all heard that Houston doesn't have zoning, and that's not quite accurate. They don't have zoning, but they have probably the highest number of HOAs you're going to see in any place, where they create de facto zoning. And you see that reflected in many of their neighborhoods. But certainly that difference in approach has their housing costs are significantly lower than Spokane's. They're starting to accelerate now, and that's certainly helped them achieve the results that they have. But no, they're constantly working on that, and they are commenting to us when we were down there that that's becoming more of an issue and challenge for them. And so they're really working even harder on finding that. The dispersed model, smaller, dispersed, is clearly something they follow. I heard the same thing from Family Promise, where they were actually using individual households. Not only did they find that the pushback wasn't there because people didn't even know that they had that going on in the house next door, but that all the statistics for that kind of dispersed approach were better. They're integrated into a community, in a neighborhood with the school, et cetera, that their outcomes were substantially better than the larger units. But yeah, that's typical.
Can I just bring up one more thing and then pass it on? So I think this looks reasonable. I mean, 90 days is pretty aggressive. So it may be good to have a group that's like meeting, that has representatives from the different jurisdictions that are communicating and bringing it back like every week. Because I mean, in 90 days, there's gonna be stuff happening every week. The only thing I worry about is performance goals. Totally makes sense to do that after you've created the structure and gotten agreement to move forward. But one of the topics that came up in the initial discussion was like, well, how do you prioritize the different investments in different types of homelessness? The chronic versus family versus youth homelessness. And so I noticed you took out the word chronic, it looks like. And I'm not opposed to starting with a blanket term and then seeing how the community wants to focus in. But I do worry that you could do all this work in the first 3 months to put together a structure, get everybody like, okay, this looks good. And then we disagree about where to focus and the performance goals. So I don't know where that fits into the model because I want us to be successful.
So I have a feeling that probably Amber, and this is what Seattle ended up doing when they created theirs, is they didn't want to usurp the authority of the new regional authority to make decisions on the tactical challenges that they had to deal with. So they didn't try to answer every tactical question before they created the entity. And I think if this is going to be successful, we're going to have to define a period that new entity is going to have to bring in a director, work with a board, and kind of determine some of those.
Identify the funding sources, the
But
most chronic challenges, and then
so
make a recommendation back. This is where we're going to focus, because the performance goals are based on some of those things
and
that
there's
are
no
TBD.
And there's no way in 90 days that we could answer all of those tactical elements. So
I just want to make sure every jurisdiction would be on board with this entity bringing back, like, this is where we really need to focus in year 1 or year 2, you know.
if we believe it needs to be integrated and regional and independent, then I think that's the most important part. And then we've got to create it and let them do their work.
Mr. French.
So just as an aside, and I guess a cautionary suggestion is, when you use the word regional approach, for the small cities, what that means is you're going to put it in my backyard, and I don't have the financial resources to pay for social services, increased police protection, and all of those other associated costs that fall into the cities and stuff. So, you just be aware that there's that fear out there for the small cities about are the 3 big dogs in the county going to push this into my backyard and not give me the resources to be able to deal with the consequences of it. So just FYI.
Those FYIs are really helpful. Even as chronic has disappeared, we found that chronic was not a word that the Valley liked. That to them implied, first of all, a downtown centric approach. That's where we're mostly seeing that. And, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's multidimensional chess that escapes me. And so, and they're also interested in the pipeline, and so, so we're starting to lose words like that. We could certainly get rid of ending, make managing, but tweak this and send us any ideas you have on it. But chronic certainly is the focus of, say, the Hello for Good, the 120 businesses in that, they do want, it's not that there isn't a very compassionate side to their approach, but they certainly want to see downtown managed better too. So we're balancing a lot of things, and I hadn't thought of NIMBY as it would apply to, say, Millwood.
Or Deer Park.
Millwood, Airway Heights, Deer Park,
So we'd like to get them all in.
Yeah.
The Valley, we're softening our language, and I don't know how you all feel about it, but it seems important to have the Valley be a part of this. But the dialogue at the Valley certainly sounds significantly different than it does here or at the city council or mayor.
Commissioner Kerr.
So you let off, you used a data point, I think you said we've seen a 64% increase in homelessness over a certain amount of time.
10 years,
What are you using as that data set? Is that point in time count?
Yeah, we're using PIT. If you go to Houston, they kind of laugh at the PIT because their PIT was kind of yesterday, because they've got such good data and they're watching, they know who's in every encampment and have a profile for their needs. And, but for those comparative purposes, we use the PIT.
Okay. What are you thinking as far as the funding share? How would that be calculated by, we get, X number of the local jurisdictions to sort of, buy into this? What would the breakdown of those funds?
County used a percentage of general fund. We do that. Like people that have been involved a lot with the city, we know it's 8% of the prior immediate previous year. We also know that the general fund is pretty malleable, so it gets pretty weird. I doubt we'll do anything like that. I think it's a little bit more of a come as you are moment, and that we'll, back to Rick's point, allow the organization to grow itself based on what's happening right then and their expertise, and not lay those kinds of parameters out in front of them.
Okay, because if we are sort of using the point in time count, I know we it's probably, I don't know, early spring last year, we got the last year's point in time count numbers. There's always kind of a delay when they come out, but if I remember correctly, I believe 78%, when they asked the question of where was your last permanent address, 78% of the people surveyed in last year's point in time count said the city of Spokane. 13% said the city of the Valley, and then other was 8%. So everywhere else combined, other than the city of Spokane and the city of the Valley, was 8%. So we're talking Liberty Lake, Airway Heights, Medical Lake, Deer Park, unincorporated county. All of those combined were just 8%. And so, I mean, I would think there'd be a strong argument that an equal share of, a general fund thing would not be equitable. So, just something to keep in mind there.
And those numbers are borne out across the country, that people tend to be in a region because that's where they're from. And the only ones that really buck that are really attractive places, in January, like Hawaii, San Diego. They have a more diverse population, but walking into here today, it's hard to imagine coming to Spokane if you're homeless, because of any reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's an argument against the 78, 13, and 8 sort of spread. So, what if a jurisdiction, I mean, say we get the entity stood up, they want to do something, and a jurisdiction passes an ordinance or a policy essentially stating that you can't do certain things within their jurisdictional boundaries. I mean, so sort of something that the PDA wants to engage in, and then a jurisdiction passes something sort of making it illegal or, preventing that to do. I don't mean to sort of throw our partners across the river under the bus there, but I mean, they have more of a accommodate homelessness than stopping homelessness sort of mindset. What if they don't like the direction of this regional group is headed, and they just make sort of some of the activities of the organization, unenforceable within their jurisdictional boundaries? I mean, because we're partners, but we can't do anything within the city of Spokane that they say is illegal. Or so, I mean, how do we get over a hurdle like that?
Rick could come up with a list of, it's really interesting that when we propose doing something like this, we realize how many times the city and county has spun off, activities for single purpose, benefits, that having a single purpose organization. So whether it's a PDA or animal control or STA, or even in the early days of government, the fire districts, the public facilities district, even the schools are managed by, early on in many jurisdictions. So there's a lot, but the one thing all those have in common is those single purpose organizations have a lot of control over much of what they manage. Much, for the most part. STA, they control their world much more than this will. We're not going to be able to control this world. It's more by agreement and conversation and suasion and such. And so, getting everybody to work together and, have a collaborative process, but certainly the goals of getting politics out of it would help hopefully create a more common playing field that you're talking about, Josh. I hope. I think that softer approach that you're talking about under, say, a housing first model, you can apply housing first in a lot of ways, but a lot of them are more strictly enforced, like in Houston, where they, require services. You're not just getting a roof, like you do in some jurisdictions. So you actually are trying to effectively end what's going on and not have a very accommodating approach. The mayor down there, like I said, when you talked about encampments, she got angry. It was kind of jump back moment, like you're not going to see it, and she sounds very accommodating on one hand because of their numbers, but there's nothing accommodating about her attitude towards people that won't go along with the system.
I think how you create the governance structure for this is going to be critical too. In other words, Houston has a nonprofit and it has no electeds, to my knowledge, that are part of the board of the nonprofit. Seattle created this through an interlocal, and their governing committee is all electeds. We've got a pretty good model, I think, with what we've done in some of our PDAs, where we've got electeds and we've got, senior executives and we've got citizens at large. And I think to me, that kind of mix makes more sense, and it also keeps representation from those different entities. So hopefully they don't take off on their own without feeling like they can work through that process.
I'm going to assume that Texas encampments aren't government sponsored like ours are, but I've seen some media coverage on the providers and sort of their hesitancy towards this model if they're expected to sort of narrow their scope and focus on one thing. How do you think you're going to overcome that? I mean, we've got a lot of providers that offer a wide array of services. I mean, to get them to narrow it down and be like, this one provider does this one thing, this one provider does this other thing. I mean, how do you expect to get them on? Because some of them have a long history of providing a variety of services.
Mayor Parker and Turner were pretty blunt about that. You control the funding.
Okay.
Tao Costas, who ran Search, the largest one down in Houston, said they were incredibly opposed at the outset, and she's evangelizing for that system now. And
okay.
So,
but I don't think I think at least at this point, our largest providers are actually on board with the idea of a regional approach here. So at least at the leadership level, not so sure down at the operations level, but the leadership has expressed some real support for this.
Yeah, Catholic Charities is hugely, and saying exactly what you're saying, Commissioner, that not only are we for it, but if this organization says stop doing this, start doing this, etc., we'll do it. And the proof will be as we go forward on that sort of thing. But VOA has been voicing the same things. Family Promise is extremely accommodating. Phil Altmaier out at UGM, Major Bryn out at Salvation Army, likewise. Even Pam Parr at the Housing Authority. I mean, we've kind of gone down with the larger ones, but I think, as Rick said, there's a natural level of fear more at the staff level, just change.
You talked about Houston having sort of cheaper housing or more affordable housing, but I mean, what's their vacancy rate as far like for rental compared to ours? I mean, because ours is almost nothing.
So when I was down there, they had actually stopped clearing any encampments at this point in time because of the housing.
Okay. So
it's
their
just all
vacancy
varying
rate's
on-
tightened up too.
It's just all varying on where it is.
Okay.
So.
That's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
So even as we break off, obviously the county and the city, for instance, control so many levers, whether it's zoning or planning or so many levers for this organization to be successful. Back to Rick's governance thing, it's going to be critical to have that collaborative relationship with the jurisdictions to be successful here.
Any other questions?
I think Commissioner Waldron mentioned, is it possible to do the 1 week check-in, maybe a weekly quick check-in via Zoom, the bi-week,
Or
with
even
a smaller
report
group?
or something sent, like, okay, we met, here's some of the 3 structures we're looking at right now, here are the questions, and then.
And then maybe appearing here. I mean, we're willing to do whatever makes sense to the board.
I think it depends on how much information you're getting each week. I mean, if you think it's weekly or bi-weekly.
Probably short weeklies with a smaller group might make sense, and then a broader conversation on a bi-weekly basis. Hopefully not like this.
For you, I'd personally like to advocate for, a bi-weekly, you guys are here so we can have this exchange with you, which is much more difficult over Zoom. And I don't want to, as informative as these one sheets can be, it eliminates the opportunity for dialogue and stuff. So, at least every other week would be nice to have it in person. Happy to do that.
We've asked your CEO, Scott, if we can have access, like having conversations with CAT is really helpful to us, et cetera. So we'll also have that kind of ongoing dialogue throughout that time period that we'll give updates on also.
Well, and I know with Randy, our CFO, getting the financial information and stuff is gonna be key. I just know when we did it during, kind of at the end of COVID, put that together, that spreadsheet, Irene put together a spreadsheet. That it included everything and, you know, anything that could potentially be used for homelessness. So it really was not true as to what we're using and spending on homelessness. And a lot of our money was going to the city. And then they were spending those dollars. So I just want to be careful of that, because like CDBG money can be used for homelessness, but it also is used for other, you know, important things around our community and around our county, that I wouldn't want that to somehow think that that's just all going to this, you know, this group, that there's still other purposes for these dollars as well. So, Mr. Rich.
What do you think of the idea of allowing them to tap into some of Ken Moore's capacity and intellectual wisdom to help create the database? Because it seems to be that if you can't get that database established, then everything else just kind of is real squishy and gray.
Well, the health district has, when we got that letter last year on how Empire Health wanted this, spend like $5 million on data, the health district actually can come in and help for a much lower cost, because we've got our data center over at the health district. And so they've talked about that they're willing to help provide input. I'm not sure what the real cost is. I know Dr. V has talked to Empire Health, because if they can get access to the city's system, I think there's a lot more information there that isn't just coming out, that the city isn't using, that if you have somebody who knows data that can go in and mine it right, I think there's a lot more data that we can get and have from the HMIS system, if I say that right. So on the data side, I think we could get the health district as kind of an independent organization, be one who could really help put some of that together. Because it's just like on the encampment with Camp Hope. I mean, until we got to what a real number was, nobody believed the numbers. And I think that's what we're going to be faced with a little bit here, is what are the real numbers of dollars? How much is really being spent now? Just like King County Authority coming up and saying, I think last year they wanted to double their budget, which of course there's not money to just double your budget. And then to come up and say, we need $8 billion for capital and $3.5 billion for operating. We also have to be realistic. Those aren't realistic numbers. I mean, I don't think citizens, as much as everybody wants to help, I think, $11.5 billion is more than I think citizens are, wanting to take care of. So I don't know. So those are just my concerns on the financial stuff and on the data, why we really do need good data to really support what are we really trying to do. Because just like, I have people come in and talk to me all the time about Catholic Charities Catalyst Project, that, they're spending, it was $5.5 to buy it and $7.5 to renovate or vice versa. And then another $5.5 million to operate it through June of next year for 100 people. So those are the things that we have to know what the dollars are and what the cost is to come up with. We've got to do this better and more affordable. Otherwise, there's not the money at the county. I can tell you that our general fund isn't just flush with cash, and we don't have the ability to do utility taxes and all those things to provide additional revenues. So that's where it's like we've got to figure out how we do it within our means.
Yeah, I think all of you are absolutely right that having that detailed information would be really helpful. So, working through Scott would be really helpful to us to get with your CFO, Kat. George Dahl has a big chunk of that information. We have the same things going on over at the city, and then reach out to SRHD, which I haven't done yet, and see what's available there. But James Caddy and Ken are two incredible resources, both talented and very good at what they do. And so seeing them work together to help on the systems and data side would be great.
And reaching out to Dr. V would be really important for you because he does, they've got a homeless group that meets, provider group once a week, just to talk about what the needs in the community. You know, just so they're doing a lot to try to already bring providers together to see what the needs are.
Houston seems to be the model that everybody tries to replicate. Has anybody been able to replicate Houston, or is Houston the only ones that have been able to make the Houston model actually work?
There were 10 cities that were targeted early on in 2010 by HUD, and they were about to lose HUD funding because of their poor performance. In a lot of ways, some of the poor performance we've seen here in Spokane. They immediately, because I think Gary characterized it well, that they had a moment in time with a super strong mayor form of government and a new elected. They were, I think, almost more lucky than good, like so many things that turn out right in life. And so they did what they did and immediately started having some turnaround. Atlanta went a different route with different ideas, you know, kind of disparate. They were going the wrong direction, and they went to Houston 2 years later, adopted that model. And I think Atlanta's reductions are actually more steep right now than Houston's, and they have the housing cost problems and have had the housing cost problems. But they may be even better than Houston. They just started later. Okay. But aside from those two, not really. You've got a million great ideas out there, but the thing we're trying to replicate is, I think, something we do really well, that we find ways to work collaboratively and regionally on projects. And maybe we're the exact right size, I'm not sure what it is, but I think that's the key to success, because both Mayors Turner, the current mayor, and Mayor Parker kept insisting it's not the ideas. It's not pallet homes or some hot idea or dispersed house. It's the fact that they all work together and collaboratively and found a way to do that. So I just take their word for it. That's the real key. And that, as Rick said, once this thing stood up, they'll make the kinds of decisions that give us the results we're hoping for.
Well, thank you. We are way beyond your time. So appreciate us.
We really appreciate all this.
Well, I was just gonna ask, is there gonna be a lead Spokane County staff person? I mean, you talked about 3 or 4 different people, but it might be good to have a lead that's involved in pretty closely over the next 3 months, so that we can make sure the county's interests are, you know, at the table.
Yep. So I have connected Kat, and she's connected with George to Gavin to be aware of what their efforts are. And kind of to Commissioner Cuney's point, we need to really know what that go forward financial funding is that the county receives. And we did have a lot of CARES and rental assistance that are not recurring, ARP dollars that aren't recurring. So Kat's team George is working on updating that repository of funding that shows what does the county receive from entitlements, what are the sources, what are the eligible uses of it, what has been committed already, and what is available to commit. So that would be something that we'll share back with the board, so you all have awareness of those and would inform on kind of where this goes in the due diligence process as well. So we do have the connection that's made already. And whether it's Ken or someone else, as we determine what sort of additional data is needed, we'll look to see what other resources we may have within the county to help support it.
So are you, I mean, is Kat enough to be on that, or do you want one of the commissioners? I'm just thinking you guys weren't wanting electeds on your.
We've asked, so with the city, we've got, trying to keep kind of one from the left and one from the right, so to speak, with each of the 3 jurisdictions if we can. So the city is kind of delegated, I think it's Brian and Jonathan Bingle to kind of be part of a smaller group that can work together without having to, you know, convene a whole public meeting every time we want to get together and talk about it. The Valley, we're talking with them about identifying a couple of folks that would participate as well.
then a senior staff member, which were with Scott and Kat, and then somebody in the CHHS area, which would be George, and we're doing the same thing at the city, which in this case is Brian Coddington, and then Cam down at their CHHS department running CHHS. So, I mean, but we're back to the two bi-weekly in-person that Commissioner French brought up, so we're there, but having an ability to do something in between could be helpful if we choose to go that way. That's the model we have with the city right now in Valley. You can let us know on that one.
So we could choose today, or we can delay it till later.
I'd like to think about it. We really appreciate your time. This is really helpful. We are getting that significant pushback. And I think I've lost my thick skin as I retired. And so it's kind of, my heart rate's actually feeling a little, it's lowering, my blood pressure's lowering. So I really appreciate the time with all of you today.
Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, I apologize, we are waiting right on time, so, I'm the sheriff's status. Well, he's not here.
Yeah, he's in the other room.
Oh, he is, okay. Well, let's see, so, with the Valley Chief, you wanna come on up, tell us? Lizzie, Jim, maybe should I move you down? Then
The whole force.
We each have an issue.
No, grab a chair and.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so I have you as the leading off.
Thank you for having us. We're all here for a couple little different things. I was asked just to address the East Valley School District ILA. I was coming over for something else. So this is the last of the school resource deputy contracts for this year. Just getting them all done. It's a recurring budget agreement. So each year will be here. The new ones will come in July and August. They'll be kind of as a group. That's the plan. And then the only thing that would change are the fees. The agreement pretty much stays standard year to year. So if there's any specifics about the contract, Todd's here and can answer. So Todd can answer to that.
Do you want to just explain a little bit that it's kind of a shared?
Right, so the way it works, there's a cost sharing agreement with them. And because East Valley is actually a Valley contract school, under the Spokane Valley PD, that officer is assigned, that deputy is assigned to Valley precinct. So they pay a percentage of the fees for that deputy, and we cover the difference. During when school is out, in the summer, they come back to patrol or a special assignment to supplement during the summer months. So.
And just, Amber, Chris, just so you know, we don't do it with all the school districts, like District 81 has their own. I think Liberty Lake provides for, in Central Valley, just for Ridgeline High School, but it resides within Liberty Lake. So it's not all the school districts, it's just some of the school districts that choose to work with us.
What is the proposed split?
Todd, it's based on a percentage of the CPI, I believe.
Yeah, so there was a base amount set a number of years ago, and then there's a CPI that's applied every year. So what we're up to now is the school district pays $41,122 for each deputy. The reason I say for each deputy, like Meade has 2, Central Valley has 2 and stuff, and so but yeah, that was all based on a base amount, and then with CPI applied every year. We did in the last year add specialty pay for school resource deputies, just because a lot of times they're swapping out hours and handling after hours events. And so the school districts are absorbing that 5% specialty pay.
So my underlying question still hasn't been asked. How much are we paying?
What's the delta on that then?
So a typical deputy, I want to say 90-ish. I didn't bring that number with me. And then, so they're paying 41. But keep in mind, it's a 10-month contract. It's September 1 through June 30th. So then they're back in our agency full-time in the summer months.
So then our cost would be 47,000.
Roughly, let's say 50-ish. And then, because we also have the benefit costs as well.
Yeah, and stuff. So I guess what I'm trying to get back to is what we did for school, 9 Mile Falls.
Right.
You know, where it was a 3-way split between Stevens County, Spokane County, and the school district. And we're maxed at 50,000, I believe, 40 or 50,000. I forget the number, but it was a 3-way split and stuff. So, but we have a hard number that we're paying and stuff. So I guess what I'm trying to find out is what is the hard number to the county for the East Valley District's contract?
Right. So Commissioner, by the time you add the base salary and all the benefits, I would say that Spokane County is paying roughly 2/3, and the school district is paying 1/3. That would be consistent with the 9 Mile School District, where Stevens County is paying 1/3, Spokane's paying 1/3, and the school district's paying 1/3.
But then with Riverside, we're paying, I'm going from memory. So I think with Riverside, we're paying half, and Riverside's paying half. Same thing
Well,
with
the same.
They should be all the same.
They're all the contracts for the county SRDs are the same as far as the cost of what the school districts are paying. Obviously, our deputies are all the same.
Yeah.
Same price.
So Riverside is also paying 41,122 during the school year.
I think we basically have every school district is covered now with Diamond Falls going, either on their own or through us.
Correct. I believe we've got the only exception would be the extremely small school districts that only have an elementary school. I think we have 2 of those, Orchard Prairie and Great Northern School District. But I think those are what, K through 6, K through 8?
Right. So because partly like Spangle or Freeman and Liberty School District shared a resource officer, those 2 school districts prior to the Freeman shooting. After the Freeman shooting had it, so each school district has their own. Look like you have concerns still.
Oh, I'm just trying to catch up, that's all.
Typically what we try to do is we try to have these all before the commissioners in August. When school started, there's a couple school districts that gets lost in the shuffle. This was one that at the first of the year, I went back and just did a status of where we were. This one was outlined. So I said, oh, I'm so sorry. We thought we had submitted it, but we hadn't, so.
Yeah, I'll just be interested in seeing the draft once you circulate it, just to see what the duties and the expectations are. Like, you know, do they get called out when there's, like, you know, how does that get managed? Because obviously some stuff happens that may need full force to respond.
Correct.
So yeah. Yeah, well, I just,
So
that would be
typically,
helpful, maybe
you know, during
with
the
the briefing, it'd be
so-
helpful to have a copy.
Sure, certainly. And in a nutshell, the way it works is most of the high schools have partner high schools. So if something happens, they've got a partner SRD that's more knowledgeable than your standard patrol deputy about the procedures at that school,
Good.
where the keys are kept, who the points of contact, those kind of things. They also take a significant number of calls off the patrol deputies by being in the schools, and they're not just in the high schools, they're often in the junior highs and elementary schools, handling those situations at the lowest level possible at the request of the principals or the assistant principals, whoever calls them. We're very proud of the program. We've had it a long time. It's been very successful. We had a meeting with all the superintendents last summer, and they all came in, and we're very happy with the performance of the deputies that we have working there, and the relationship with Spokane County, with the Sheriff's Office, the Valley Police Department. Very complimentary and thanking us for being present and even if it's just the pro-social aspect of having positive law enforcement, with deputies in the schools, interacting with the kids, you see that the positive outcomes of that.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna just go down the
Go
list.
ahead. Okay, what the.
So the list I have is then,
Yeah, Chris is next for the Q&A.
So we have the source of quality management?
Yep.
All right, so the quality management services that we've been using are through Ron Smith and Associates. It's an ongoing contract we've had for a number of years as we went through our accreditation process, become nationally certified. This year, we're changing our service provider to provide us a more local provider. Approximately the same cost between the two is $3,400. For that, we have a quality manager that's actually here locally out of WSP. Will visit our lab, walk us through the accreditation process, and assist in that accreditation process to keep that national certification, which allows for our forensic personnel to collect and process evidence and testify in federal court.
any other questions on that one? To the tribe for the identification.
Yeah. So the next one is the Spokane Tribal Impact Mitigation Grant. That was a grant that we've applied for several years. In December, essentially we put in for a significant amount of money to help offset some of our capital expense requests from last year. We were awarded $50,500 from the tribe. I actually was able to receive that check in a ceremony a couple weeks ago. Very complimentary to the relationship the Spokane tribe has with Spokane County, specifically the sheriff's office, and responding there to assist as needed. So with this grant, we're able to purchase some much needed equipment, again, to help offset some of the expenses from going out there. That's what those funds will be used for.
What's the amount of the grant?
$50,500 is what we were awarded.
I thought that's up. How much did
Oh,
you
I
get?
applied for $300,000, and we were awarded $50,500. And Commissioner CUNY is on that awards board, and I think there were 6 or 7 agencies total that received awards.
Yeah, I think we sent out like 10, so of the applications, I mean, it was like over $1 million, but there's only like $250,000 that we could hand out, so.
Sorry, where did the grants come from?
So it's their impact mitigation fund, so it's a percentage of their gaming.
Got it.
They get,
Okay.
that goes towards this. So it's a set amount, it's based on the gaming and a percentage. I don't know, it's 2% on.
That is correct,
Class
Commissioner.
C.
There's a state compact, and under the compact, both the Spokane tribe and Kalispell's have to have a mitigation fund. And then each one of mitigation funds, Commissioner French is on the one with the Kalispell's, Commissioner CUNY's on the one with the Spokane tribe. And then they are involved in determining the applications that come in and which ones they're going to fund.
And it's only for equipment?
No, it can be for whatever the application is, Commissioner. And in this case, I'm not sure. I think Mike said it was for equipment in this case.
That's what we submitted from the sheriff's office.
So it depends on, like, I think they're going to be probably coming back and saying in the future for the grant application is show what the impact that the tribe has on our organization, and are there things that would help, so is there certain equipment that would help? I think that's why we looked at that section of the equipment, because it would be more helpful if there was a mass event at
Right.
the casino. So that's what they're trying to do, is look at what the impact is that they're having on the community. And then it is limited to the dollars, so like I said, it was like 60,000.
So just so I get my math straight, you said you submitted for 350,000?
300,000, just over 300,000. Right.
So submitted for 300,000 and we got 50,500 out of that.
Right.
So how do you plan on making up for the other 250,000 that wasn't awarded in the grant?
Those will just be items that we have collectively on our to-do list for the sheriff's office that, as other grants or other funding comes available or coming back to the board perhaps next year.
And they were wish list items too, so.
Yeah, they were, another drone for issue and equipment for SWAT and equipment for major crimes and some night vision equipment, different things that, it'd be nice to have. And so now we're scaling it down to figure out exactly out of the things we submitted for, what's the best use of those funds at this point.
Okay.
So next is the 2022 Improving Criminal Justice Responses to Domestic Violence.
So that's the OVW grant. That's a continuing ongoing grant as we are a sub-recipient of the YWCA. YWCA is the primary on this one. For that, over the period of the next 4 years, we'll receive $24,818, basically to fund overtime for our positions in domestic violence, specifically and predominantly for our lethality assessment program, which has been an ongoing program, obviously trying to curb domestic violence and get the survivors out of that particular circle of violence. For that, the county provides two detectives and a 0.15, I believe, a lieutenant as FTE as part of that as well. And they also receive the benefits of our forensic program and criminal activity there. We work with the YWCA, SPD, County and City Prosecutor's Office, Spokane Regional Domestic Violence Consortium. That's basically curbing domestic violence in Spokane County and throughout the state.
Is this a federal grant?
I believe this one is through the Office of Improving Criminal Justice Response through OVW.
Any other questions?
That was 24,000?
24,818.
I think that's gonna, then Todd, the search and rescue and helicopter.
Okay, this is probably one of the easiest ones that I think the commissioners will see. This is a Swedish company that manufactures search and rescue equipment, both a handheld device as well as a device that mounts on a helicopter. They propose to allow us to use for free of charge for a 24-month trial period, a piece of rescue equipment, see if it enhances our ability to find people. Again, the only thing that they ask is that we insure the piece of equipment while it's in our possession for the 2 years. But again, no cost to the county, zero grant program, trial period for 2 years. Also, Under Sheriff Chief Ellis, who is very instrumental in our air support unit, also knows about this program as well.
It's basically a tracking system. It's built into skiers' gloves and things like that. It's used all across the world, and it's specifically used for avalanche victims. So, if someone is trapped in an avalanche, then it sets off a beacon, and the helicopter can fly over and identify where that missing person is. We just responded to an avalanche and did a hoist rescue south of Walla Walla last month. And we responded to multiple avalanches in the area. So it'll be a helpful piece of equipment for us.
So is it like infrared? How does it differ from the cameras that you bought 18 months ago?
So this is something that you wear as an outdoor enthusiast.
Oh, it doesn't mount to the helicopter?
So the equipment to find them does, but so for, if you're say you're a snowmobiler, right, you can have this little device that's embedded into your helmet or into your snowmobile suit.
Okay.
And then it automatic tracks. If the helicopter device is mounted to it, goes through it and finds a signal from the person who might be buried under the snow.
Okay. Okay.
And from their literature, it sounds like more and more. I mean, we always think about avalanches and skiers and stuff like that. More and more in the industry, it could be hikers any time of the year. It's in their clothing. So if you get somebody that's just a lost hiker during the rest of the year, it would also work in those applications as well.
So will there be like a public campaign to make sure people understand, hey, we have this equipment now, so we encourage you to invest in buying the tracker thing? I mean,
We'll definitely put the word out. It's currently also used by Snohomish County Sheriff's Office and used by Dewberry area in Montana. We're kind of in the middle there, so we'll be the first one in eastern Washington, North Idaho that will have it. Certainly, we'll help put the word out. We meet frequently with our ski partners to coordinate rescues. We'll make sure they're aware of that too.
Commissioner Jordan, did you?
In case it comes up, so this is an international company out of Sweden. They just, like I say, it is a free product. They use a template agreement. We ended up using the exact same template agreement they use with Snohomish County. I think there was some suggestions from legal to add language. It was given as advice to do that. But again, the company said, we'd like to keep all of our international contracts consistent. So we chose not to add the additional sections and go with the same template that was approved in Snohomish County. Again, because it's a free product.
Is Snohomish County still in the trial phase? I assume the whole reason it's free is if you like it, you can buy it. Is that correct?
No, so Snohomish has been using it for a while, and I think this will be free for us too. It's really in the manufacturer's interest that more rescuers have it, because that's only going to support their products as well too. It shows the value of purchasing, the clothing that they'll have the stuff built into. So I anticipate that after 2 years, much like Snohomish, it'll just continue on.
Thank you. Any other questions for any of our law enforcement that's here?
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for being here. Appreciate it all.
Okay. Thanks for okay, we're on the hot seat.
Yeah,
still.
exactly.
So they just continue
We have
buying it, and
There's
they're
Lori, I'm like,
using it, buying the tracker themselves. Interesting.
So,
yeah, anywhere you can find it. I'm good, really.
As long as there's no catch.
A little chilly, that's about it.
No catch.
Yeah.
What's the catch? It's my first thought.
Yeah.
Catches you, so rescue people.
Well, that's probably for the best, right?
It would be good, but I don't know if we want to be the only
We'll try to be
helicopter having it, so I'm assuming they're gonna reach out to more places.
I just got a text from one of our group that was over in Olympia last week on GSF-IN that came down with COVID. And so suggested that we be aware that we might have been exposed.
Okay.
So just FYI.
It's fine, anytime you're in a big group, it's gonna.
Yeah.
So,
Something
okay.
you don't want to share.
Yes, thank you.
I was gonna do the same thing.
Not saying anything, but.
Fair enough.
Well,
Good morning.
welcome, Lori.
My name is Lori Markham. I'm the Executive Director for Spokane Regional Emergency Communications, which is what we lovingly refer to as Shrek 911, not the Ogre Shrek, but SREC Shrek. We are the county 911 system here. We dispatch for everybody with the exception of the City of Cheney Police Department and City of Spokane, but everyone, or City of Spokane Police Department, we just took on their fire. But we dispatch and take calls for all of them as well as crime check. I have brought a couple of my board members with me. Scott is one of my board members that gets to lovingly sit on my board. Cody is my board chair. Cody Rohrbach is the Fire District 3 Chief. And then Under Sheriff or Chief Ellis, depending on what hat he's wearing for the day, is here as well. And what we were hoping to chat with you about, we sent in a letter making a request. And our request is that we have outgrown our facility. We are currently located at 1620 North Rebecca Street, which is right next to the Spokane Fire Department Training Center. And it was built in 2004 with the intent to kind of grow into it, and we have done that, and we have outgrown it. I have about 135 employees when I'm fully staffed, and we have really reached a point where I'm doubling people up in cubicles, things like that. Not to mention, it is not the safest place to have a 911 center, as we've learned through some recent studies through AdCom. So we are directly in the flight path of Phelps Field.
We are right next to the river and the dam, and right down the hill from a train transport that transports crude oil, and they're just putting in the north-south freeway not too far from where we're at. So we are looking at we are looking to be in a position where we have outgrown our facility, but additionally we have seen a lot of risk that we are a little bit nervous about with staying where we're at. So we started having the discussion at the SHREC board level through our strategic planning. And one of the things that we talked about was the need to want a new facility, a state-of-the-art facility where we can put people in an area that we can grow into. So in the course of that conversation, we were meeting with Sheriff Knezovich during that time, and he said, hey, I'm building this training center with a shooting range not too short of time. You guys should consider taking a look out there. So we hired a company called AdCom Engineering, and AdCom does a great job of being able to look at what 911 facilities need, security options, things like that. And they went and did a study that I believe was sent and attached for you guys to look at. And they said this would be a great spot for you guys to put a 911 center if you're interested in doing so. So I've had a couple different discussions with Chief Ellis, and he was so kind as to take Cody and myself out last week to walk around and see kind of the lay of the land and the property. And after discussions with my board, we would like to make a formal request for our Board of County Commissioners to be able to consider that spot, to be able to build a 911 center and to start looking and planning for that. Did I miss anything that you guys want to add?
I think that's a great summary. We see a lot of benefits from co-locating on that facility, just infrastructure, security, some other things that center would need, as well as where it's located geographically there with the interstates and multiple access points.
I think if I'm wearing my SHREC hat, the benefit is that a lot of the utilities are in. This facility is already being built to an Air Force security standard, so there's a higher level security out there. So that makes sense. And I think from my sheriff's office hat, the benefit that we see from that is that, generally the training center is going to be a Monday through Friday daytime operation. To be able to incorporate a 24/7 operation out there as an extra set of eyes to ensure that everything stays safe out there. So I see mutual benefit to both sides if this were to be located out there.
So two things. Are you going to require a communications tower adjacent, and how tall will that be?
We'll need a radio tower, I believe similar to the one that we currently have at our 1620 North Rebecca location, and I believe they said it was about 120 to 130 feet.
So you might want to get a hold of the airport and coordinate with them, because you might be in the flight pattern for the second parallel runway, and I think the maximum height for a tower, I'm going from memory, so it's either 45 or 65 feet. And so that might be a challenge to get above the 65.
Sure, we did have a conversation with, when AdCom was looking into this, with Washington State Patrol, who's also in a flight path, and their tower, which is similar to the one that we would need. They said they didn't have any concerns on that, but we will be having to ask for permission to put a tower in that area no matter what.
Yeah, the tower for State Patrol is not in the flight pattern, where I think you're going to be in the flight pattern. And so they're adjacent to the flight pattern. They're off the center line for the runway. I support the idea. And in addition to this, for my fellow commissioners, the three jurisdictions on the West Plains are also talking about coming together to build a regional judicial center, governmental center, which would take for Airway Heights, Medical Lake, and Cheney, locate everything in one facility as opposed to having district judges kind of float between the different facilities and stuff. So they are also looking at this site as well. So it seems to be an ideal location for governmental activities and stuff. And so, we've created a nightmare. No, I'm just kidding. We've created an opportunity for that facility. So, but the only thing I'd question is the tower. We've had some other potential operations that wanted a 60-foot stack, and we've had to relocate them in other areas of the county. So that would be something you'd want to get taken care of quickly.
all the risks, I believe, Lori, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but all the risks that Lori identified with the current location were incorporated into the AdCom evaluation to look at places that those risks could be mitigated. So it was resiliency, continuity of operations. Of course, we can't be in a situation where emergency communications is non-functional or cannot be reached by employees and then compromise our 911 system. So the critical evaluation of where a location could be ideally to be able to mitigate against those things were very informative in the evaluation that AdCom did.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Amber Waldrop, new county commissioner. Well, thanks for the presentation. So have you looked at other sites besides this site?
So a few years ago, the Spokane County 911 Board, so prior to Shrek, was looking for a backup center, and they had looked at a couple of different locations throughout the county and had not been able to find one just yet that they thought would be feasible at the time. So we looked at the areas that they looked at to avoid, and then in the discussion with the sheriff's office, we just kind of took that and went with it at the time.
So what is the training center that the sheriff's office has? I'm not familiar with it.
Small arms range. So it's currently under construction right now. It's a small arms range training center for a lot of the sheriff's department. Chief Ellis can give you more information.
So it's a partnership with the Air Force. There's two main components to it. One is the indoor range, and that's being shared with the Air Force. It's a 21-lane indoor range. And then
so that's being constructed.
It's currently under construction. It's scheduled to be completed and moved into hopefully October 1st. And then there's another component on the sheriff's office entirely side, which is classrooms, defensive tactics room, a virtual reality training simulator room, underground gas pumps for fuel reserve, things like that.
So current location is out at the old school.
902 in Craig.
Yeah, out by State Line. It's part of East Valley School District. There's an old elementary school that they're using right now.
Okay.
Are all the Spokane City fire dispatchers, have they now moved over to Shrek?
So they had a choice to either come to work for Shrek or to do something differently, and we didn't actually receive any of the Shrek or the Spokane fire dispatchers. But we do have the work, we do the work for them.
So your staff has not increased as a result of that?
It will increase by four positions as soon as we can get staffing.
So that hasn't contributed to the hitting the tipping point of needing a new facility?
No, not yet.
So previous, because the whole Shrek thing formed after I left the city. Previously, some of the dispatchers were located in other locations, and that's why now you're maximizing, because that was the place where most of the dispatch was done.
It was the place where the majority of dispatching was done, but we had to bifurcate a little bit when the city chose to do their own thing, because there were now several different departments and we had to take on additional work. But aside from that, our staffing needed to change. The fire group in itself went from 24-hour shifts, which were not sustainable for anybody, to 12-hour shifts, and so that changed our staffing levels. And law enforcement has been, the law enforcement dispatch area has been notoriously understaffed for the sheriff's department. We're increasing that staffing as we go forward, and call volumes continue to go up, and the need for more employees has continued to be a prevalent thing. I think we took 50,000, how many more calls last year when we looked at that? About 30,000 more calls just from last year, and it's been steadily climbing,
So, just thinking about my previous comments, so I like the idea of Shrek being in that facility if it will work. If it doesn't work, I would also suggest you ask the airport about other property the airport owns that would be adjacent to flight lines but not interfere with flight lines. So there might be another opportunity for you to be on the West Plains, but just maybe not in that exact location. So I want to make sure that I was clear about, the opportunity and supportive of it.
So are all parties in agreement then that the current site is not a good site for the dispatch to occur?
So in Shrek, yes, the board has agreed that this is not a good place for them to reside. I'm not sure what Spokane Police Department will do, but that's our perspective.
So it's not just, I'm trying to understand, so you're outgrowing it because you have more dispatchers, because they were, I guess you're saying they were understaffed previously. And you're saying that the site, which was co-funded by different jurisdictions, right, to build, it's not a good site because of those different factors.
Correct.
Okay. Just taking it all in, new information.
There's a lot.
Trying to understand. So it would be helpful to know, like, the staffing increases and bodies in the building and just understand some of that background. I know other people are up to speed, but.
So I guess I would say on the letter, since it's specifically referencing the, that training center, I think we'd want to know for sure if that, before we approve the letter. Okay. If that, works with the airport. Sure.
Well, so are we approving this looks like this was more you're coming in person to present us with a letter of recommendation. You're not asking for us to sign the letter to ourselves, are you?
We're looking for a letter of support to say that we have the ability to start planning to build out there. So it's gonna be funded by us. We're not coming with any other ask, just that you guys are in support of us being able to build on that property.
Okay, gotcha.
Is there any chance that you could be able to take over dispatch for the Washington State Patrol?
Not in the works right now or anything for the future. They're a unique situation in that Washington State Patrol is responsible for dispatch all over the state, so not just the Spokane office.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Okay.
Their offices are out on the West Plains too.
They're right off I-90.
Yeah,
Would
they're
there
right
be-
at the Geiger exit and stuff.
There'd be
so-
an opportunity to, you'd have to build a new facility anyway. Okay. But it could be another location.
Could be another possible location if the one we have doesn't work, that could be another alternative location. It'll probably be a little bit more expensive because it's freeway exit property and stuff, and it's property the county doesn't own. But it would be potentially another option.
I was gonna ask Lori if that was integrated anywhere in the state. Is WSP integrated in any of it?
We could be the first, you know?
Well, it's a great question.
Well, I mean, just for training purposes of having cross-training and stuff, I would think.
So I think pending some of the further evaluation that Lori will do based on Commissioner French's question, if it does look like it's a viable location and it doesn't have any conflicts with the airport runway and height and all that sort of stuff, I think the intention of the letter from Shrek is to request if the commissioners would be supportive of this so that they can begin moving forward. So we'll come back, have Lori come back and clarify some of what she's found out, and then we could draft something for you all to say you are supportive of it, and then they can start going forward with the planning process.
Yeah, my interest in state patrol is just to have the state pay for it. Pretty transparent.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Look forward to you coming back. Next, we've got Kyle.
Yeah.
And before you start, so I do have I believe at 11:45, it's the GSI work meeting today for me, so depending on how much we want to do now versus if we want to delay some till after lunch.
Yeah, I mean, the commissioners can certainly, you've got a meetings, agenda session this afternoon, so to the extent that you don't get through everything, if you want to take a hard stop at noon, you could just pick those things up this afternoon at 2 o'clock. That's desired.
Are you available this afternoon, Mr. Micho?
I am, Madam Chair. I would request, though, if you're going to continue, just a simple motion continuing the items that you don't get to this morning till 2 o'clock or as soon as possible thereafter, because you have a working session, I believe, Scott, this afternoon, so you move that just a little bit. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes. So, we have tomorrow, every 4 years, we get together, whether we want to or not, for STA. It's their quadriennial meeting, Zoom meeting. It starts at 1:30 and goes until 2:30. And all the commissioners are on that group meeting. We represent.
I don't think I got that.
I don't have it.
I got it.
How do you spell quad?
Q-U-A-D
popped up.
R-E-N-N-I-E-A-L.
Which way we is? They didn't send this out as a calendar invite.
I don't have it on my calendar.
Well, okay, let me back up then a little bit.
Okay.
So every 4 years, the board for the public transportation benefit area is required by statute to get together and determine the boundaries for public transportation, as well as any other changes like the board structure or anything like that. And so this year is the year for the quadriennial meeting, and they were set and advertised for this tomorrow at 1:30. The reason I mention it is because it could conceivably go a little long, or it could be very short, and we might or might not make it back for 2 o'clock. And so I was going to suggest that we might want to, and because we need a 24-hour notice period, we might want to start our meeting tomorrow at 2:30 instead of 2 o'clock, so that we all can be at this meeting for STA and stuff. So
I saw it, but it didn't seem like we needed everybody there. But I didn't know if the current STA board members were gonna attend or.
yeah, so
I think my question is, who's gonna go on behalf of the county?
And this one is sent just to me, so I don't know if it was sent to all
Yeah, I
5
got
of us. And I don't, and the email doesn't actually say who is to be in attendance. So do you know it's all 5, or is it
well,
3? Is it 4? Is it just the 2 that sit on it? I don't know.
So in the past, it has been, so the STA board is not the group that meets to establish this boundary.
So it
This
does,
is-
sorry to cut you off here, it does say, it says state law requires that each component cities within the PTBA and designate one elected
Yeah.
official from the
Just need to send one
cities to
person.
sit on. All 5 county commissioners are designated as
Oh.
representatives on the
Shoot, I didn't read the
review.
rest of that sentence.
Each representative attending the
gonna say not
quadrennial
it.
review will have 1 vote on any motions. So it is all 5 of us.
Oh, okay,
So,
all right.
well, Amber, you remember this
Oh, I
because
sat
we-
through several of them.
Well, remember
Yeah.
when they changed the composition of the board, when Commissioner Milky and O'Quinn were leading that effort and changed the whole, reduced the representation for the city, gave an extra member to the small cities. And then the city of Spokane went to the legislature and said, no, it's going to be done proportionality. And then we came back and restructured the STA board. So now we've got 4 members for the city, and then everybody else splits the remaining seats. So all 5 of us technically are part of this group that meets every 4 years. So I don't anticipate that there's going to be anything Herculean that's going to come before the group that says we're going to change the way STA is functioning. I think STA is functioning very well the way it is. I have not heard anything from any of the other cities or any of the other board members that says we should do X, whatever X is. So I think that this is going to be a pretty straightforward, easy ratification of everything we've got. Let's move forward and be done. But
There
having
is a
said
link,
that,
there is a link for virtual or in
Yes.
person at
yes,
their office. So, and the email was sent on the 12th of this month, so.
because it required two-week notice.
I assume.
Yeah,
assume
I guess I
all
just
of
read,
us.
I was reading the first line
The
that
first part
said,
of it
one
says-
person, I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's it.
not it.
Well, I have STA, I'm not on STA.
I assumed it would
So,
have.
I'll probably just zoom in it, because really the new state law, you have to do it by proportional,
Yeah, it
and they
is.
did the population numbers and it hasn't changed. So,
Hasn't changed. So like I said,
I think it should be a 15-minute or less,
I would hope that it would be.
but you never know.
But you never know. And the minute I say it's only gonna last
Okay.
10 minutes,
I'm not
it'll
being
take
a
2
They
hours.
say we anticipate a short meeting,
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
their words.
famous last words right now.
So, yeah, I just want to make it FYI. I mean, if you wanna keep it at 2 o'clock and we run the risk, that's great. But I just want you to be
That's
aware.
right, thank you for the reminder.
There is that overlap and, you know, the statute says that all 5 of us are gonna be there.
Well, Madam Chair, if in fact you can't start the meeting at 2, the clerk of the board, in the absence of everyone else, can continue the meeting till a time certain tomorrow afternoon, Commissioner French. So if you're going to be 15 minutes late or half an hour, the clerk of the board can, by formal action under the Open Public Meetings Act, just continue it for half an hour, 30 minutes, or whatever she's advised to do.
15.
So I will be there to assist, and then that comes up, Commissioner French.
Because we have like 4 public hearings, I mean, they're off roads.
That's correct.
But I hate to delay it too long in case somebody is, so, there for public hearing.
Madam Chair, if in fact that happens, we would actually go online and the clerk would advise what we're doing so everyone was aware. Yes.
So we may just do it in like smaller time increments than a half hour, in
Yes.
case that's, you know, what we.
I just want to make sure everybody's aware.
Well, now
We had a game plan.
Because it's not noticed on our,
Yeah, next time they should send a meeting invite, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So what about the elected official department head meeting at 1? Is that a Zoom meeting that we have
They're
like
Zoom.
once a month? Okay.
and it's typically for the department heads, the elected officials that are department heads.
Oh, okay. So we're just invited as a courtesy if we want to join us?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. And is there is there an agenda for that meeting that's attached?
Yeah, usually, Ashley will send one out, probably the day before.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm multitasking on it right now, commissioners.
Okay.
So this
You're
meeting
triple
tomorrow.
tasking.
Yes.
Yes.
Lots of,
Way that we can
lots of
zoom in
times it's
from
stuff
the-
that we discuss in here, and so these meetings are just to
STA.
tell the rest
Oh,
of the county.
your question
this
is
what
if the board members are going to STA, how are you going to do that?
Could you
Keep track of all those
And my concern would be, pardon me,
Gina?
The 1 PM department head elected officials, I do not have that meeting noticed. Typically in the years past, a different department head and other elected officials.
Yes. Yeah, it just popped up in the calendar and I didn't, so good to know what the focus is.
Yeah, no action by board on that. It's more of an informational communication roundtable for our
All the other
leaders. Yep.
so I think Chair CUNY asked tomorrow for the meeting, this STA meeting, is the board going to Zoom in together? Or are you going to do it in your separate offices? That's what your question.
Or is everyone attending in person?
Right, I don't know, I assume it can be done always, I haven't seen the notice. You've got it, Commissioner Kearns, I assume you can virtually.
But both are options. You can either
exactly,
Zoom in
so-
or you can go over to their office.
Exactly.
That's right.
We just don't have it noticed on our weekly schedule.
Well, I would assume the STA's notice is sufficient. Certainly, it would be good for the clerk to add it, just so there's no question, if that's what you want to the weekly calendar, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
I will get the.
I'll get back to what,
Sorry for that little
No, that's-
interlude, but
no, it's good. So, okay, so will have to leave it in 10 minutes, so I'll let you take on the meeting at that point. Since this is the first meeting for me to attend. Okay, Kyle and Deb, I guess, I'll let you start.
Thank you. We have a few public works items to brief you all on today. Thank you for having us today. I'd like to introduce the new commissioner, specifically to Deb Geiger. Deb Geiger is our solid waste manager. So she has oversight over our closed landfills as well as our transfer station operations and our global efforts for the regional solid waste management. So Deb, brief you real quick today on a retainer agreement for some outside counsel. I think we've mentioned before about kind of the upcoming to-dos with the solid waste and our expiring contract. So I'll let Deb take it from here.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I just want to, I'll make it real quick because I know you guys are pressed for time. It should be a 2-minute spiel and I'll be done. But I'm basically here asking for your signature on approval for a retainer agreement for specialized services for solid waste that'll show up in front of you next week. And just to give you a little background, in 2014, and I can go back further if there are questions, but in 2014, the county was handed over from the city management of the regional solid waste system. And this included the purchase of 2 transfer stations for our county. And so the county now owns and operates those through a contract that's going to expire in November 2014 with Waste Connections. We are not choosing to extend this.
What year does it expire?
2024.
24, got it.
Those are synonymous in my brain. 2024 in November. And we are choosing not to extend our agreement with Waste Connections. We are going out for RFP for a new contract. And what we are hoping to do is retain services from, I always say their name wrong, Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood. And they specialize in public works, infrastructure contracts and agreements. And they were used in the previous term in 2014 when we went out for bid. And they drafted our current contract in our RFP that we used previously. We're using both those documents as backbone in this session with some improvements. So we want to retain their expertise because I've used them for amendments on this current contract as well. We won't use them to the extent that we did in 2014. We will be using them at a more limited capacity, but we feel that it's important to have the specialized attorneys on hand because this would be a multi-million-dollar contract for long term. So,
Madam Chair, the Prosecuting Attorney's Office supports this request. We used them previously. We specially deputized them. Their services are very, very helpful and critical. They're experts in what they're going to be doing for Deb and for the Public Works Department. So we support this approach to moving forward.
any questions?
Who would be the lead attorney for them on this?
Joe Sullivan.
He did it before, Commissioner French. He's just excellent.
Yeah, I've worked with him on a few amendments.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Next up, we have Rob Lindsay here, who's going to brief you about our interlocal agreement with Central Valley School District with regards to their environmental day camps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kyle. I'll be very brief. This is one of my favorite parts of our programs in environmental services. We in Spokane County have the benefit of a funding mechanism called an aquifer protection area that supports our wastewater utility. And that allows for education funding, which is a gift that we have in our utility that few other utilities have. And Spokane County has leveraged that very much and has become the go-to for environmental education, particularly as it relates to the aquifer and water-related issues. We have a history of supporting programs like West Valley School District, East Valley School District, Meade, and this particular agreement is for Central Valley School District. We've been supporting a program in a with other partners, including Liberty Lake and the City of the Valley, where we bring every fifth grader from Central Valley School District out to Liberty Lake Park, and they are afforded a half-day experience where they learn about the watershed, and they learn about the flora and the fauna. It's a wonderful outdoor experience for all of them. Spokane County has historically provided $5,000 a year to Central Valley to help offset costs associated with substitute teachers, transportation, basically any way they need to use it to keep that product going, or that project going. And so we've been supporting that. Again, for the last 18 years, it's APA fund supported. We have APA funds in hand until the end of 2024, where we'll be discussing renewing that, but that's a separate discussion. So today I'm just here to seek your authorization to move forward with contracts, continuing to contract with Central Valley for the next 2 years for this valuable program.
And do you think, Rob, that they may look to the Learning Center versus Liberty Lake, or does Liberty Lake provide different opportunities?
You know, that's a good question. I could see us doing both potentially, Commissioner. The Liberty Lake Park provides a good opportunity because there's water there, but then there's also the uplands and the hills, and the kids are taken on a hike where they go up and they actually look at animal skulls and bones, and so they learn more than just water. So Liberty Lake Park provides a unique experience, but of course our relationship with the school districts are always growing and enhancing, and we see wonderful opportunities with the new learning center at Saltese to perhaps leverage that.
Thank you. So this will be on the agenda next week, right?
Yeah, there'll be an interlocal agreement on the agenda next week, actually for a 2-year agreement, so $5,000 for each year.
We know how many kids are impacted by the program?
Yeah, this year we're expecting about 1,150. So, well, you didn't have the benefit of this last year. I came in and spoke about West Valley Outdoor Learning Center. They come to our Water Resource Center at our treatment facility, and they bring thousands of students too from their school district. So we literally serve thousands of students every year from the Valley and from me. As I said, it's one of my favorite parts of this program that I'm most proud of.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Our last couple of items, Matt's going to help brief us here. We have a art installation with the Mill Road Waikiki Roundabout, as well as an interlocal agreement with the North Spokane Water District for one of our big capital projects. So we'll start off with the art installation at the roundabout.
Thanks, Kyle. Good morning. Thank you for the time. This first item is really just an awareness item. There won't be a board action required. I think most of you are probably familiar. We have a roundabout up at Waikiki and Mill Road, and there was no treatment initially for the center of the roundabout. The neighborhood reached out to us and they wanted to do something out there. It was a combination of the Kalispel tribe, the Fairwood HOA, and then the local businesses. And so we've been talking back and forth with them since the construction of the roundabout. We worked, I believe it was a year ago, to get power out to the middle, power and water. And they did this amount of hardscaping that you can see there. There's basalt chips and river rock. So far it's been really low maintenance, which is kind of one of our talking points with them. And yeah, exactly. The less landscaping we have in this area, probably the better for everybody in terms of it staying looking nice, and also just for safety, having folks out in the middle.
Running back and forth.
Yeah, just not the best always. So they came to us recently and they want to put some art out there. And I found art can be more controversial than I give it credit for. So I just wanted to show it to the board and get any feedback you might have this first.
Dear God.
That's offensive.
Come on, seriously.
Did you draw that?
Dare you?
That is mine, that's my years of art school. No, actually, I don't even have that side of my brain, as near as I can tell, so.
No, I was gonna say, nice drawing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I think they're, and you'll see on these next slides too, this is kind of the overall, that's what they're going for. You can see they're talking about putting bulrushes in, which, is not a huge amount of maintenance. We're gonna talk to him about that. I think Kyle's been scarred by his time at the city with the landscaping that they've seen there. So it's one of those things we'll talk to him about. We'd like it very, very minimal. We did make allowances for it, so we'll keep talking to him. Nate, our traffic engineers, worked with them on getting things out of the sight lines, things out of the clear zone, keeping it safe, and now we're just kind of down to the finer points here. Next slide. And this is obviously just a picture of a heron, kind of one they're using for a model. Next slide. And this is, they're gonna have 2 logs, I believe they said, one on each side with a heron on it, one facing north, one facing south, and then a heron up on top of the basalt. Ron loves it, I can tell. And last one, just another example of the one they're picturing, I believe, for the top on top of the basalt column. So really just an awareness item, just wanted to see if there was any thoughts on it.
We would pay for the maintenance of the landscaping, correct? Or are
They're
they
gonna do
covering that too?
everything. That's the theory.
They are, okay.
As you know, it's very hard to always have that follow through.
Remember,
HOAs transition.
Market
over
Street?
time. Yep. Yeah.
And Lincoln?
So have we, this is gonna sound like a dumb question, but other communities actually do this. Have we considered maybe introducing some artificial plants as opposed to real plants in these situations so that we don't have the maintenance issue to deal with?
Yeah, you could see where they could use metal or something else to create the bulrushes. They'd look good year round. They wouldn't require maintenance. So it'll be a conversation with them. We're trying to work with them, though. I think they have a very limited budget for the most part. The Kalispell tribe is helping out quite a bit, I think, with the art. And it would be a good conversation. We'll see where we can get to on it.
So there is water though to the.
Yes, there is water to the middle, so we could have plantings there. We just have concerns about people continuing to maintain it and the safety issues. That's really kind of it.
We understand too, once expectations get set, move forward, and then if they walk away from that, we own it, which is any of the experiences that we've had in the past. So, but something like a physical art installation, very minimal on the maintenance side of things, and something that I think is much easier to move forward with.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
The next one is an interlocal agreement with North Spokane Irrigation District. And these are just a consent agenda item, but we wanted to take the opportunity just to talk to you a little bit about what we do with our counterparts and utilities regarding road projects, and conversely when they have large utility projects. So really the 2 things, and you can see on your slide there, if we have a road project coming up, we start working at least a year, if not 2 years in advance, to notify all the utilities that exist in the right of way, to give them opportunity to plan and get it into their budgets if they have improvements they want to make in that roadway. Once we come through and do the road project, we don't allow cutting that road for a number of years. Our utility cut policy is the same as City of Spokane's and same as the Valleys. So just trying to keep the roads from getting cut, because that obviously shortens the life of the roadway dramatically, and also is an inconvenience to the citizens. And then conversely, when we find out about large utility projects, whether it's running a new sewer main down a road or water, gas, whatever it may be, we try and coordinate those efforts. We're doing that in a number of places to where, maybe they just need to take out a quarter or a third or half the road. We'll come in and we'll pay for the rest of the road, so we get a brand new road back. It wouldn't necessarily always be the road we'd be doing first. Oftentimes they're local access or smaller ADT roads that wouldn't have been on our 6-year plan. But it's always great for us when we can take that opportunity and give the neighborhood a new road, in a road that we have to worry about in the same time frame. Get it on our vegetable paving cycle too. So that's kind of it. You can see on county road projects here, the utilities obviously cover their work and their portion of the cost, including the construction management that we're doing. So just kind of a little bit of a cost sharing benefit, a little bit of economy of scale. It'll oftentimes make a little bigger project that might be more attractive to certain contractors. And then on utility projects, obviously we have to do the coordination of the plans and the spec and take care of the construction management. With utilities, we'll typically do the compaction testing and then all the roadway testing, just to make sure we get the roadway. We have a lot of folks, that's what they do. So just kind of our quality assurance that we're getting it back like we wanted it. That's all I have. And like I said, there will be one specific one coming through as a consent item, I believe on tomorrow's agenda, but these come through fairly often. I probably won't brief you on every one unless the board desires to hear a briefing on each one, but they're fairly common. We tend to do a handful each year. Any questions?
All right. Thank you
very
Matt.
much. Thank you.
We love remediation training. At least I do.
One more? Yeah, John.
I want more drawings,
Absolutely.
more art.
I'll work
Got
on
ones
that.
in my district too.
It's never too late, right?
District's my artwork.
All right, Justin, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Take it away.
Scott, I will be brief this morning because I know you guys are running out of some time. A lot of this you've already heard, so this is going to be rebriefing some of the commissioners for the new ones. This may be new information, so please ask questions as you come forward. Gina, the next slide. First briefing is our initiative for student wellness, the screening, brief intervention, referral to treatment. Long acronym, ISW SBIRT. This is a phase 2 implementation and a continuation of a contract that the board approved back in November, but it will continue it from a January to December period. The school districts that were chosen back in November by the board were the additional schools were Riverside and Freeman. So this will be a continuation of ESD 101 in those schools providing the SBIRT program. Next slide. I won't go too deep in this because I think we got plenty of information here, but this was a county innovative initiative to address the gaps in behavioral services for youth. As many of you know, medical necessity criteria applies for a lot of services, but what about preventative and diversion and pre-engagement? Medical necessity in those cases would exclude them. And so this program includes all Spokane County youth in that initiative phase so that we can prevent individuals from having to do long-term inpatient, outpatient, or hit that level of need. So this is excellent. If we actually built this off of a similar program in King County, I think we do it better because we actually provide treatment as part of it. King County just does screenings. So 2 parts. We do a evidence-based screening that addresses critical challenges, behavioral health needs, as well as strengths and resiliency factors that triggers various results, tier 1, 2, or 3. They all get follow-up if they hit a tier 3. Tier 1s are generally the I'm anxious or need additional help. So that is currently phase 1 is in West Valley School District, in Centennial Middle School and West Valley High School. It's going great. In fact, the school loved it so much, they took one of our clinicians. We have to rehire for that. So that part is exciting. So that's the background on the ISW. Again, this is for the phase 2, Riverside and Freeman, just receiving approval for the board to continue with that contract. The next one. Yes, sorry.
So it doesn't matter what the students, you're just coming at it from the students, and you're doing the screening, it doesn't matter what they're eligible in terms of for their insurance? Do you only provide them the follow-up to Medicaid eligible, or how does that work?
No, so because we're able to use the mental health sales tax funds, any Spokane County youth is eligible for the service. At the point at which it becomes eligible for Medicaid and it meets medical necessity, we do a handoff so that the county is not paying for services that Medicaid should. But for the vast majority, they don't rise to that level of need, but they need something before it rolls into needing their insurance. All youth who are involved in this have their parents approve and sign off, so it's full notification. We've had some parents who've opted out, but most desperately wanted have opted in.
So what can you provide to kind of help students that are at that tier 2 or tier 3, besides direct one-on-one counseling?
So there's quite a bit of engagement services, resource management, that we actually partner with the schools. They already do quite a bit of services, but a lot of it's warm handoff to additional. So they're provided everything up to intensive outpatient services, and then down to resources, food management.
And so it's West Valley's where you've been doing it,
Phase 1, correct.
and then now this is to go to Riverside for.
And Freeman.
And Freeman, okay,
Yeah, with ESD 101 providing the clinicians.
right. And it was brought up last week when we were in Olympia. We sat behind the ESD 101 new executive director, and he was making a pitch for what happens after the ARPA funds go away, right? Because aren't these mostly being funded from the ARPA funds? Oh, they're not.
No, this is mental health sales tax dollars.
Oh, okay. Isn't there another initiative though that's using the ARPA money to help fund in more of the rural areas, more behavioral health specialists?
ESD 101 has a communications engagement service that they're providing.
So it's different than
It
this.
is entirely.
I don't think that didn't come from our allocation, did it?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
That's through OSPI or something separate.
Correct. And ours is much more engaging and treatment-based oriented. Theirs are more preventative and communications engagement, is what I've heard.
So what would you define with? So tell me what that means, like posters?
No, so
School? Like
they're trying to ensure that there's access between the clinician and the provider, so they provide the telecommunications engagement, warm handoffs. We provide the direct treatment. If you're identified to need it, you receive it right there.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions on that one? I mean, it's much more in depth, but it's exciting. We should have additional information. You have handouts for some of the project updates.
So is the plan, I guess, to continue to, do we have, it's a choice to use those sales tax dollars in this way. So is there a plan to expand it to other districts, or what? This is why you're doing the pilot, to see how effective it is, gather the data, and then be able to see how to improve the program so it works best.
Correct.
For the students and families
And really,
schools.
and really get a good idea on what are the absolute needs, because we can't say that everyone needs outpatient behavioral services, right? But what are those, and what to the extent? We're finding the need is actually greater than we anticipated based on the data that's currently being put out by the 7th and 10th graders that are currently being reviewed. So more intensive engagement with behavioral health, and especially in that gap area where medical necessity criteria doesn't apply. So what's happening is we're letting them get worse so that their insurance will cover the services they'll be provided. And so we're providing a critical one that only other areas can count it, and they're not even doing it in the same way. So I think in this way, we're pretty innovative.
Great.
Yeah.
What phase is the pilot in? Is there a point at which you'll say, here's our data, here's the final report card?
At the end of this school year, we should have the final report on the West Valley. We got a hiccup because they stole one of our clinicians, so we had to rehire. And then the phase 2 will have data beginning in September because we have to ramp up. Finding workforce is challenging. And then we'll have the end of year report for both programs next year.
Thank you. Very cool.
And the second request is a briefing on our change or request to, with our current medical director under our ASO. We want to terminate that contract for convenience and then initiate a new contract with a behavioral health director, Keith Brown. There's a lot of reasons why. When we started the contract back in 2019 with our current medical director, there was kind of an idea about how much would be needed. We're actually needing a lot less hours. So this would cut costs, and it also utilizes a medical director who is in partnership with other ASOs, so we're uniform in our discussions and process, and then also would allow us to, again, to save money over the long term. There's also reduction of the potential conflict of interest because of our current medical director providing services from some of the sub-delegated entities that exist within the network. So this is just an easier separation and overall saving of funds. So the request there is to allow for us to move forward with terminating that under the existing resolution that was passed by the board, and initiating that contract, and then initiate a new contract with Dr. Keith Brown. And that's pretty straightforward. Questions? And the last one is our DD mini grants. This is just FYI on the current status of these. Most of these are a continuation of existing grants, just renewing those for the next year. The two new ones that were added were the Isaac Foundation and Spokane Hope. The RFP process completed, they were selected. And so for those, essentially, we're requesting that you initiate or allow us to initiate the two new contracts and then continue the existing ones. Any questions?
Any questions, anyone?
Is there, just really quick, is there like a committee that reviews the mini grants, or how do you come to those determinations of the awards?
Yes, so when it's put out to RFP, they actually have a procurement evaluative committee, which also serves as their DDAB, their disability oversight board. And they provide the advisory capacity to review the RFPs and make the selection in conjunction with what the PEC, or procurement evaluative board, would select process.
So who is they, or is it local or state?
It's ours, it's our advisory board, yeah, through the county. Made up of individuals with lived experience throughout the county.
Thanks.
Yeah. I believe two of them were excluded because they exceeded the allotted amount and didn't meet the requirements of the RFP anyways.
Okay.
I'm sorry, which did you say are the two new ones, the Isaac Foundation and who else?
The Spokane Hope.
Spokane Hope, okay.
So those are the only two for this.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I will leave it up to the will of the body. Do we want to continue on? For Mr. Oh, he stepped out. Oh, no, he's coming. Do you want to continue on with Mr. Maceo, or do you want to punt this till 2 o'clock?
I say we keep going, but is somebody hungry over here? Do we expect any executive session topics?
We don't have that, no, nothing, we don't have to right now, we do have one this afternoon. We do have one for today.
But we can do it, later. Okay, well, since Mr. Maceo's here, I'm just thinking we should
All right,
move
Jim.
forward.
Well, thank you, Amber, I appreciate
You've been
that.
waiting patiently
No,
for
well,
us.
Actually, I'm here for Mark McLean today also, just to let you know. And so if I could have Mr. Valencia please go to the slide. The first item I'm going to talk about, board members, is the tourism promotion area. And I know that Commissioner French and Commissioner Kearns are very familiar with this. In fact, Commissioner Kearns is on the TPA commission, but Scott indicated that he thought I ought to update both the new county commissioners. So, as indicated on the slide, the purpose of this particular briefing is for me to share with the Board of County Commissioners the recommendation of the Hotel Motel TPA Commission as to how the money which they collect in 2023 should be allocated between two particular funding bodies. And the amount of money which they collect in 2023 will be $4.8 million. So it's quite a large amount of money. Ron, if we could go please to the second slide. I wanted to share with the board members, again, a little background on the TPA. In 2003, the legislature determined that tourism promotion was really critical in the state of Washington. So they adopted legislation, and the legislation allows cities and counties to form tourism promotion areas. And once the tourism promotion area is formed, the city or county can impose a special assessment on lodging businesses within the boundaries of the TPA. Spokane County was one of the first counties to establish a TPA in 2004. And it continued until 2022, when the city of the city of Spokane Valley determined to terminate the TPA. They terminated because I think they wanted more input on how their share of revenues from the TPA were spent within their boundaries. Once that TPA was terminated, the hoteliers in the city of Spokane and then incorporated area determined that they wanted to form a new TPA. So they petitioned the Board of County Commissioners, and the petitions had about 78.1% of the lodging businesses supporting the establishment of a new TPA. And the new TPA boundaries are different than previous. The previous boundaries of the TPA included the city of Spokane, the city of Spokane Valley, and the unincorporated area. This particular TPA, however, that was formed anew by the county commissioners only includes the city of Spokane and the unincorporated area of Spokane County. And the interesting thing about the new TPA is, which is indicated on the next slide, if we could go to that one, please, is the new TPA, there are only 3 lodging businesses in the unincorporated area and 33 in the city of Spokane. So you ask yourself, why is Spokane County the lead? Because the hotel motel industry was comfortable in Spokane County being the lead under the old TPA. And so they wanted the county to continue to be the lead under the new TPA. And of course, the city of Spokane was very supportive of us moving forward. Under the new TPA that's been set up, there's a committee known as the Hotel Motel TPA Commission. And that commission consists of 5 individuals. It consists of 3 voting members and 2 non-voting members. The non-voting members are members of the City of Spokane and Spokane County legislative bodies. Your representative on the TPA Commission is Commissioner Kearns. The responsibility of the TPA Commission is to meet on an annual basis and make a recommendation to the county commissioners on how the monies collected for that current year should be spent to promote tourism promotion. The Visit Spokane helps Spokane County administer the TPA funds. Visit Spokane has requested individuals interested in promoting tourism submit applications to receive a portion of the $4.8 million which we collect on an annual basis. In this particular case, applications were submitted by Spokane Sports and Visit Spokane. The TPA Commission met and have recommended to the Board of County Commissioners that the county commissioners execute an agreement with Visit Spokane and with Spokane Sports as follows. With regard to Spokane Sports gets $25,000 from a reserve fund, which the TPA has. They then get the first $50,000 that is collected in 2023, and then they get 28% of the remaining portion collected through the remainder of 2023. With regard to Visit Spokane gets 72% of the total money collected in 2023, less $50,000, and that $50,000 is part of the amount which goes to Spokane Sports. Under the state law and the interlocal agreement between the city and the county, the Board of County Commissioners is the entity who signs an agreement with the entities that are entitled to get monies from the TPA. Both Spokane Sports and Visit Spokane submitted very comprehensive applications as to how they're going to spend this particular money in 2023. And so what we propose is next week on your regular agenda as a consent item, we will have both agreements for your consideration. The agreements have been reviewed by Visit Spokane, who is our agent for the purpose of preparing the agreements, and they are consistent with the recommendation of the TPA Commission. Do any of the board members have any questions with regard to these 2 agreements or the TPA?
Go for it, Chris. Who is on the, and sorry if you said this, I missed it. Who is on the commission and how are they selected? You
had a good question.
Thank you.
That is a good question, Chris. the ordinance establishing the TPA plus the interlocal agreement provide that there's 5 members on the TPA commission. 2 of them are non-voting ex officio. One is Commissioner Kearns from the Board of County Commissioners, and the other is Zach Sapone from the City of Spokane. The other 3 individuals are from the either owners of lodging businesses within the entity or their operators. 2 of them are recommended from the hotel motel industry. They're appointed by the City of Spokane, and 1 is recommended by the hotel motel industry, which is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. I apologize, Chris, I don't know their respective names, but I think Commissioner Kearns may very well know them.
I don't remember what their names are, but I mean, your description is correct. I know Councilmember Zapone's on there. The names of the actual operators slip my mind.
So basically, they get to make, they want this tourism fee, assessed, and then they get to like make recommendations ultimately to us about who gets those
Commissioner Wilder,
revenues.
you're exactly correct.
So it's really, it's giving them.
Self-imposed tax.
Right,
Yeah.
because they see the benefit.
The fee is already in place.
Right.
They don't eliminate it through this, through
When the
this
county
form.
commissioners formed the TPA commission, when the hoteliers requested the county commissioners perform, they determined what they wanted the fee to be.
Right.
And when the county commissioners then just simply approved it, it's between $1 and $4, depending upon where you're located and the amount of revenue which you generate annually on an annual basis.
It's similar to the bid in the city.
Your Director of Law and Justice, your Director of Finance Administration administers these particular contracts, and the applicants have to submit certifications on how they're spending the money consistent with their application and the state statute, which says they can only use it for certain tourism promotion items. So the reason I'm here is to tell you next week, with Mr. Simmons' direction, we'll have both agreements on your agenda as I've shared them with you.
Was the recommendation unanimous among the group?
Oh, yeah, it is. Yep. And it was one too, Visit Spokane made their pitch on sort of what they were requesting. Sports Commission made that, I mean, there wasn't even any debate. No, we want more. We want you to, it was very cordial and very professional. And so, yep, that's what they asked for and it passed unanimous. Yep.
Thank you.
The good thing about it is the lodging businesses themselves are members of the TP Hotel Commission, and they know best how the money should be spent, and at least I think that's my understanding, Commissioner Kearns.
And the 2 entities work together a lot as well. So, I mean, if one entity's getting a percentage or 2 more, it's still gonna benefit that other entity as well. I mean, they're very closely related entity, even though they are separate entities.
And the reason, Chris, why we have 2 voting members from the city and 1 from the county is they have 33 lodging businesses, we have 3. And so we thought that was appropriate, the board did when we set up this new TPA commission. Very good. Any other questions? Okay, now we go to a real interesting one, and we've got 2 people here to help me with this presentation. Firstly, we've got Randy Bischoff. Randy, you want to come over here so they can see you? Of course, he's your Director of Finance and Administration. And of course, we've got Mike Sparber. He's your Director of Law and Justice. And if I could have Mr. Valencia, please go to the next item.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Vice Chair, I'm sorry. I'm
Acting chair.
Acting chair. So you're gonna talk about the
Regional Law and Justice Center, Commissioner French.
I'm wondering if this could not be deferred until this afternoon, so Commissioner Cooney can be part of the conversation as well. I think it'd be a more informative presentation if all 5 of us could be here.
I would agree.
That's what you want?
Yes.
Sure. Then I guess that takes us to Scott. Anything?
I would hold off this afternoon.
Okay. Any miscellaneous items? Anybody wanted to, anything for the good of the order? Nothing? Amber, you look like you're thinking maybe something?
I was reached out to by Christine from Desitel Heggie because they work with Empire Health Foundation, and we're wondering if they could get on our agenda for a briefing, like a Monday morning briefing on
DH or Empire Health?
Empire Health, to talk about how many folks have been housed from Camp Hope, who's left, and what their plan is. So I was just wondering if that would be of interest to the group.
It doesn't bother me.
Would that be all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll move forward with finding a date that works for Empire Health Foundation to come in the next month.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I had a question about our agenda, or consent agenda, and just wanted to make sure that this was accurate. Item 5F, it's about awarding a bid to VIB Production Northwest, but Superior Court, but it says with CARES Act funding?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct, not County CARES Act, this was something you all were briefed on, I think it was July, so it'd be
Okay.
good to have a refresher. This came through the ACO, Administrative Court.
Okay.
They provided some of their dollars to the grant to Superior Court for
Okay.
AV upgrades.
Okay, because when I saw CARES, I was like, I'm pretty sure our CARES are long gone. So,
It's through the
okay,
ACO.
so it's somebody else's CARES.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Who cares?
What's that? Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. Whose CARES?
It's not that we don't care.
It's just somebody else cares.
As long as somebody else cares.
Somebody else cares.
Caring goes on.
Mr. Kearns, once you've found out if there's any other information, may I recommend that you make a motion to continue the item that Commissioner French addressed to 2 o'clock or as soon as possible thereafter, please?
Do I just state that, or do I need an actual
Well,
motion to continue it?
I would prefer to have a motion.
Okay. All right, well, any other final items? Anything good of the order? Anybody? Whole room, anybody's, jump in if you want. No? Okay, anything, Jared? Anything new for us? Nope. Okay. All right, then I would be open to a motion to continue until 2 o'clock or as soon thereafter.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Do I need to open this for public testimony? I do, don't I? All right, we have a motion and a second. I will open this up for public comment. Anybody wishing to testify on the motion, please press *9 if you are on the phone. If you're joining us by Zoom, please use the raise hand function. Second call for anybody wishing to testify on the motion. Third and final call. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and we will call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. All right, we will see everybody back at 2 o'clock.